Last Meal. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Wandering ruler of the abyss in the present world. The embodiment of depravity and decay. Savior of the blood descendants. Thy humble servant hereby prays for favors. Charlotte once again awakens from his sleep. What met his eyes was the familiar purple and black bed roof, carved with an exquisite thorn rose pattern, with black and gold rimmed gauze curtains draped around it, and 4 pointed bedposts painted with religious bas-reliefs loomed in the middle of it. Even though it had been 3 days since he crossed over to another world, he still felt a bit uncomfortable looking at this Gothic-style noble bedroom. Of course, the murmur-like prayers that he heard every night in a daze that resembled the whispers of ancient gods was also one of the reasons. Charlotte always had the illusion that something was calling him from the underworld. But every time he woke up, he couldn't remember what he heard. Turning his head to look out the window, night had already fallen. Under the deep moonlight, occasionally a hoarse cat howl could be heard. Charlotte was a bit surprised. Today's nap, he had actually slept directly from midday to night. Tock tock tock. The bedroom room door was knocked gently. Is it that time again? Charlotte frowned slightly, instantly getting a headache. Without waiting for him to say anything, the door of the room was slowly pushed open with a creak, and 2 columns of maids dressed in black and white dresses walked in neatly. Their expressions were ancient and serious, and they held in their hands a set of aristocratic girlish dresses of various styles and magnificence and complexity, and wooden boxes filled with trinkets and jewelry dazzled the eyes. Good evening, Miss Charlotte. It's time for dinner. Mrs. Castell asks you to change your attire and go straight to dinner. The head maid stepped forward and curtsied woodenly with extremely standardized movements. Oh, right, it should be a she now. Charlotte numbly swept a glance at the women's clothes they had brought with them, instantly changing into the stupid, silly appearance from the original body's fragmented memories, with the look of a clueless girl who had just woken up from a nap and was naturally drowsy. Good evening, Ms. Mariana. And then, naturally skipping over the overly sweet and cute girly dresses, she pointed to a Gothic Lolita that was predominantly black with gold inlays, supplemented by burgundy and white, tilting her little head slightly and sweetly. That's it. The voice was soft and delicate. That innocent and lovely appearance was a far cry from the calm and helpless appearance when she was just alone. Men's desire for protection would explode when they saw her, and the women's motherly love would overflow when they saw her. Even the fat black cat passing by outside the window was momentarily lost in thought, and almost fell when it unfocusedly stepped on the air. It can be said that this girl is really good at acting, and her acting skill is top-notch. However, as the professional servants of the long-history Castell family, the well-trained maids remained serious and without any fluctuation, making Charlotte feel rather bored. After receiving permission, these archaic maidservants acted like a silent army and immediately took action. The great nobles were used to this. There was no need for them to do anything at all. Others served them in everything. Someone carried a silver basin filled with water to wash up for Charlotte. Someone held a silk gauze dipped in rose dew to wipe her body, and someone picked up a whalebone hairbrush to take care of her long hair. Charlotte herself was at their mercy, like a dress-up doll. What can she do? She never had this kind of experience in her previous life, not to mention this kind of complicated aristocratic dress. She hadn't even touched women's clothing. The costume change lasted for nearly 30 minutes. Charlotte, on the other hand, felt as if a century had passed. Miss Charlotte, the change is done. After a while, the head maid once again bowed and ordered someone to push over a gorgeous standing mercury mirror. In the mirror was a young girl who looked to be 13 or 14 years old. Not tall, her features were as delicate as a doll. The black and white butterfly headdress gathered her soft and silky long blonde hair and the end was tied into a curl and naturally hung on the shoulder. Milky white and smooth skin with a hint of sickly pale, with sky-like clear blue eyes, giving people a kind of delicate and pitiful feeling. The ruffled decorated white shirt with a burgundy bow ribbon in front, and black corset will be the youthful waistline girded extremely delicate. The tulle outer skirt with black and gold as the main tone is decorated with complex and gorgeous lace patterns, matched with the inner burgundy skirt, black silk stockings and small leather boots, bringing a strong sense of mystery and nobility to the people, as if adding the forbidden touch of maturity and seduction to her still young and immature face. To be honest, with such a beautiful and lovely appearance, even after days of looking at herself, Charlotte would still fall in a daze in front of the mirror. But sadly, this person was herself. However, although there was a bit of a problem with her identity after she transmigrated, Charlotte didn't have any complaints. Beauty itself was a rare resource. Changing to a very different life was also a novel experience. Following the maid out of the bedroom, the young girl walked through the gorgeous long corridor covered with handmade silk carpets into the dining room. The dining room was equally luxurious. The walls were covered with religious decorative paintings, and the large crystal candle lamps cast a faint light that reflected a dream-like splendor from every angle. A wide variety of dishes served with exquisite porcelain laid on top of more than 10 meters long purple and black carved U-shaped dining table. Roasted suckling pig, baked escargot, pan-fried scallops with foie gras, grilled paper steamed fish, pan-fried steak, raised potatoes, fruit salad, flaming pancakes, chocolate lava. As far as the eye could see, I'm afraid there were no less than 50 variety. An old woman wearing a monocle stood in front of the food cart and was setting a cream of mushroom soup on the table. Seeing Charlotte, she smiled slightly, put down the porcelain plate on her hand and said dotingly, "Oh, who is coming? Isn't this the jewel of Castell and lovely Miss Earle, my precious Charlotte?" Saying that, she took out a small exquisite box from behind her back as if she was doing a magic trick, and inside it was a beautiful cross necklace that was absolutely valuable at a glance. Holding the jewelry box in front of the young girl and shaking it, the old woman speaks lovingly. "Happy birthday, my baby. This is your birthday present this year." Sweeping a glance at the shiny necklace, Charlotte subtly twitched her mouth. But soon she noticed the old woman's apron that had not yet been removed. She smiled, feeling a slight warmth in her heart. "We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Dear grandmother, are you cooking the dish personally today?" The old woman put down the trinket box and first carefully wiped her hands with a wet towel, then dotingly rubbed her little head and said gently, "Of course, today is your day, and no one knows better than me what you like to eat. Let's eat, my little birthday girl. Tonight's dishes are all your favorites." If the maids and deacons in the manor were always looked unsmiling, serious and depressing, making Charlotte after transmigrated feel as if these servants had some kind of terminal disease, then the grandmother of this body was the existence that had comforted her the most in the past 2 days. Elaine de Castell, she is Charlotte's grandmother, the current head of the Castell family, and the young girl's only relative. As the acting head of a high and mighty noble family, and at an age where she should be taking care of herself, the old woman still personally cooked for the young girl, showing how much she doted on her granddaughter. Preparing so many sumptuous delicacies, even with the assistance of a chef, was not an easy task for an old grandmother. "Dear grandmother, you've worked hard." Charlotte's heart warmed. She skillfully pinched up her skirt and gracefully made a bow, then naturally sat down at the dining table. After 3 days, she was already familiar with these noble processing. The old woman, on the other hand, glanced at the gorgeous pendant clock on the wall and the night color outside the window. "It's getting late, let's start dining." After saying that, she politely declined the maid who came forward to serve her, and personally tied the napkin for the young girl, her movements slow and gentle. Honestly speaking, if it wasn't for the fact that her legs and feet weren't weak and it wasn't convenient to walk around the table, Charlotte seriously doubted that her grandmother, who had spoiled her to the skies, would even take over maid's job and personally divide the meal for her. Today's dinner was even more delicious than the last 2 days. It was well cooked, flavorful, and memorable. Charlotte dined elegantly under the maid's service while thinking about her future life. The memories after transmigration were not complete, but 2 or 3 days is already enough time for her to figure out her family background and current situation, and gain a firm foothold. It had to be said that this identity that Charlotte had transmigrated to was a real surprise. Although the gender was different, the rest of it was perfect, definitely a textbook-level start of soaring phoenix. This body is named Charlotte, which is sort of the same name as her previous life after the phonetic translation. Her parents died when she was young, and she is the only direct descendant of the long history and wealthy Castell family. A true otherworldly old aristocrat, the future head of the family. Even though she is still young, with the experienced old countess personally sitting as her escort, no one dared to covet the Castell family's estate. When Charlotte turns 16 years old and reaches adulthood, she will be able to officially inherit the family's earldom and a large area of affluent territory with dozens of castles, manors and wineries. In other words, Charlotte's transmigration starts with financial freedom and the pinnacle of her life. She inherited a family fortune that she couldn't even finish spending for the rest of her life. After familiarizing herself with her identity, Charlotte knew she was going to soar in this world. In the past 2 days, she had already begun to think about how to take advantage after she inherited her title. Utilize her blue star knowledge to advance the technology in this primitive foreign world? Use the capital of this status to create a business empire spanning the entire continent? Or hire 100 beautiful young ladies to serve her every day and live a dreamy life of joyful salted fish? However, just when Charlotte was thinking about it, she realized that her grandmother, Countess Castell, had not moved her knife and fork. This aged noblewoman had simply been sitting there quietly, smiling at her. The young girl hesitated and gently put down her cutlery. In the fragmented memories she had inherited, eating alone without waiting for the elders to start was unladylike behavior and a matter that the original body tried to avoid as much as possible on a regular basis. Dear grandmother, aren't you going to eat? Charlotte asked. Countess Castell, however, gently shook her head. No, my little Charlotte, these are yours. Saying that, she smiled faintly and reached out her hand to gently and slowly caress the young girl's cheek. After all, this is your last meal. Last meal? Charlotte froze slightly. She couldn't help but look at Countess Castell, only to feel that the other party's smile suddenly became deep and eerie. The clouds outside the window slowly drifted past, revealing a round scarlet moon. The blood-like moonlight poured through the window into the dining room, coating everything with a hazy scarlet color. In Charlotte's suddenly contracted pupils, the originally dignified and kind Countess Castell suddenly underwent a shocking change. Her face became as pale as a dead person, and her blue-gray eyes were gradually tinted with the blood color of madness. The loving kindness in her gaze had completely disappeared. In its place, there was bloodlust and greed. My dear baby, you don't seem to look well. The old woman smiled faintly at Charlotte, the corners of her mouth grinning up to the base of her ears, her long tongue, like a snake letter, constantly sliding gently over the young girl's cheeks. Damn, monster. Charlotte was so shocked that she instantly stood up. The tableware on the table was swept to the floor by her, colliding with each other and making a soft piercing sound. Miss Charlotte, you dropped your knife and fork. The headmaid's emotionless voice rang out. A rotting armful of maggots picked up the knife and fork and gently placed it in front of Charlotte's body. Holy shit, Charlotte's eyes instantly widened. She stiffly turned around, only to see that the face of the headmaid beside her had long since rotted, white bones were faintly visible under the bloody rotting flesh, and a few fat maggots were wriggling in her eye sockets. Outside the window, flocks of crows circled and made a series of cawing sounds. In the dining room, nearly 100 waiters and maids looked at Charlotte in unison, the corners of their rotting mouths grinning slightly in a bizarre and uniform smile. The stench of rotting corpses spread out instantly. Charlotte's scalp instantly turns numb. Without hesitation, she turned around and fled. However, just as she took a step, her body suddenly went limp and she instantly lost all her strength. Oh no, the food was poisoned. A strong sense of exhaustion permeated her limbs, and she fell on her butt to the ground, limping slowly. At the end of her consciousness, she heard the indifferent and cold command of Countess Castell. It's almost time. Prepare for the final bloodline sacrifice ritual. Chapter 2. Bloodline Sacrifice Ritual. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Hurt. It hurts. When Charlotte woke up again, she found herself hanging on a metal cross, with 4 large iron nails piercing through the palms of her right and left hands and 2 crossed feet. Gurgling blood flowed down the cross like a small stream, pouring into the grooves that had been carved into the ground long ago. Charlotte endured the pain and looked around, seeing through the dim scarlet moonlight of the skylight. The grooves are a circular pattern centered on the cross, with intricate and complex designs, like magic formations in novels, surrounded by kneeling living corpses dressed in maid and waiter costumes. Countess Castell stood at the forefront, exuding a chilling aura. She was facing herself, holding a blood-red scrap of a page in her hand, as if she had torn it from some ancient book. Seeing Charlotte waking up, the Countess smiles faintly, revealing 2 sharp teeth. Yo, my baby, you're awake. Charlotte's heart sank. Hanging on a cross is not a good situation. Combined with the inappropriate-looking magic formation underneath her, and the surrounding living corpses that were obviously doing some kind of prayer, Charlotte, who was familiar with the online trend, had roughly guessed that she was going to be used as a living sacrifice by the other party. This world is not an ordinary another world at all. Charlotte's brain works fast. She sniffled, crystal clear tears instantly rolling down like silver beads, leaving 2 curved tear tracks on the pink and lovely face. Ooh, grandmother. She tears up and opens her mouth, looking at Countess Castell with a weak, pitiful and helpless cute gaze. Seeing that pitiful and unbearable appearance, even Countess Castell, who had transformed into a monster, is slightly stunned and the terrifying aura on her body vaguely stopped. But soon, her gaze became deep again. Scarlet eyes flickered slightly, and her greedy sight slowly slid over Charlotte's body. What a charming little goblin. It's a pity that you can't be converted to a charming blood servant. Saying that, she cracked open her hideous mouth, mocking like a hunter teasing his prey. Poor little thing, now, stop pretending. Little Charlotte died of illness long ago. You are nothing more than the saints of Holy Royal Court's true spirit that I summoned over in order to complete the final bloodline sacrifice ritual. Ah, with the same true spirit as a sacrifice, I think my lord will be quite satisfied. The secret of transmigration was seen through, and Charlotte could feel her heart tightening. But along with that, there is also a hint of doubt. The saints, true spirits of the Holy Royal Court? What the hell was that? As if figured something out, Charlotte's mind moved slightly. She quickly stopped sobbing and quickly said, Grandmother, no, Countess Castell, I think there might be some misunderstanding between us. However, the old woman lost interest in continuing the conversation and shook her head mockingly. Misunderstanding? Hey, your struggle is pointless. After saying that, she takes out a filthy cross from her bosom and aims it at the young girl hanging in midair. The old woman's crazy voice trembled slightly, and her expression was turned hideous and fanatical. Come on, Holy Spirit, let me enjoy admiring the divine light of your imminent depravity and the twisted expression of your agony. Deep rays of light blossomed on the cross with a chaotic evil aura. In the cruel and tyrannical gaze of Countess Castell, the filthy light shone on Charlotte's body. Wail, scream miserably, feel the agony and despair that belongs to the darkness. This is bad. Seeing that evil halo of light that made one vaguely feel like vomiting just by looking at it, Charlotte's heart tightens. She was so frightened and mad that she couldn't avoid it, so she could only turn her head sideways, close her eyes and grit her teeth. The evil and chaotic light was like sludge thrown into the present world, wrapping the young girl in it. However, the imagined pain did not come. Other than feeling a bit chilly and hearing countless crazy prayers constantly murmuring in her ears, Charlotte did not feel any discomfort in her body. She slowly opens her eyes. The Countess was still fervently holding up the filthy cross, her expression incomparably hideous. The cross flickered with light and darkness, and the pressure was overwhelming, enveloping everything. The basement was eerily chill and quiet, akin to falling into the abyss. But other than that, nothing happened. Charlotte's expression is quite bewildered. Although she didn't open her mouth, that somewhat confused and puzzled expression, which also seemed to be mixed with celebration and apprehension, seemed to be saying, That's it? The old woman also froze up. Her brows furrowed slightly as she flipped around and scrutinized the defiled cross in her hand as if trying to figure out what went wrong. After some scrutiny, she frowned and lifted the cross back up, before channeling her magic once more and chanting in an even more frantic voice. Scream, beg for mercy, scream in despair at the light of the fallen. The deep light blossomed once again, enveloping Charlotte's body with an even more evil and chaotic aura than before. However, this time, still nothing happened. Charlotte. Countess. The two look at each other in the eyes. The atmosphere is pretty awkward. The old woman's expression instantly turned hideous, and her terrifying magic power erupted like a volcano. Why is there no divine light on your body? Why aren't you corrupted by the light of the fallen? The tsunami-like pressure rose and fell in succession, accompanied by a frantic roar, bringing unprecedented pressure to the young girl. However, Charlotte quietly breathed a sigh of relief in her mind. Combined with the old witch's previous words, she can roughly guess what the reason is. The young girl regained her composure and her voice had a hint of confidence. Countess Castell, I think, there really is a misunderstanding between us. Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? The old woman's eyes were scarlet, and her expression was as dangerous as a furious beast. Charlotte weighed her words and said, You should be holding some special ritual, right? And this ritual is also related to the saints of Holy Royal Court? What I want to say is that I'm actually not any saint of Holy Royal Court. That is, it seems like you were summoning the wrong person. Countess Castell was silent. In the next second, Charlotte only felt a strong spiritual force descend on her body. A moment later, the spiritual force dispersed, and the Countess' expression became increasingly ugly. There's no holy seal. Surprisingly, she really isn't a saint of Holy Royal Court. How is this possible? How? If you're not a believer of Holy Royal Court, why were you summoned by the Holy Spirit summoning ritual? How am I supposed to know? I was just working all night and fell asleep in a daze. Who knew that I would wake up in this hellish place? And her gender even got swapped. Charlotte cursed in her mind. Her face remained unchanged and she shook her head. I don't know. When I woke up, I was already like this. Saying that, she weighed her words, revealed a smile that she thought was friendly, and continued. Countess Castell. As you can see, I am not the true spirit of the saints that you need, and there doesn't seem to be the slightest reason for you to sacrifice me. Perhaps, we can talk about it. Talk about it? Do you think you were qualified? Countess Castell's scarlet eyes flashed with mockery on her face. Her killing intent was so strong, as if she was completely attributing the failure of the summoning to Charlotte. Charlotte did not doubt that if she couldn't come up with a suitable reason, the old hag in front of her would definitely kill her in the next second without hesitation. Pressing down the apprehension in her heart, Charlotte feigned composure and continued to laugh. That's not necessarily true, compared to a sacrifice that is doomed to fail. I rather feel that I will bring you more benefits by staying alive. Summoning me here might even be another unexpected blessing for you. A great man is always flexible. Now amid life and death crisis, facing the crazy old woman who was obviously mentally unstable, Charlotte egged on without any bit of pressure. Face and self-respect and whatever were temporarily put aside. First, think of a way to survive. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Oh, so, you still have some abilities that I don't know about? Countess Castell raised her eyebrows slightly. This time, she carefully sized up the young girl and seemed to gain some interest. Tell me, what do you have? Charlotte smiled slightly and continued. For example, I know a lot of gourmet dishes, all of which are delicacies you have never seen before. After saying that, she saw Countess Castell's gaze slightly moved. This was also expected. From the fragmented memories that Charlotte had inherited, Countess Castell was indeed a gourmet. It was just that. If it's just gourmet food, it's not enough to buy your little life, my little Charlotte. The Countess shook her head slightly. I also know how to do business, and knowing Castell family's business, I am confident that I can expand it several times within 10 years. Charlotte pondered for a few seconds and continued to raise the stakes. Countess Castell pondered, seemingly moved, but in the end, her gaze towards the young girl remains the same, trying to probe for deeper reasoning. Charlotte gritted her teeth. I also know many pieces of knowledge, all of which are not found in this world, and each of which has the potential to bring a revolutionary era. Wait. Hearing this, Countess Castell suddenly interrupted her. She narrowed her eyes slightly and then asked, You just said that, you know a lot of knowledge that is not found in this world? Charlotte hesitated for a moment. Yes. You came from another world? Charlotte subconsciously wanted to deny it, but feeling the aura that restrained her in the dark, she only hesitated for a moment and slowly nodded again. Yes. The secret of the body's possession was already known anyway. Adding another one of being from another world didn't seem like much difference. Countess Castell was silent once again. Gradually, only the corners of her mouth rose slowly, turning into a satisfied smile, which continued to bloom, becoming more and more excessive, and finally turning into an exciting maniacal laugh. Hee ha 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 ha. Good, very good. Seeing the other party so happy, although Charlotte's heart felt a little strange and uneasy, but in the end it was considered a temporary relief. Burying her scorn, grievance and anger deep in her heart, she pressed down her apprehension and nervousness, and tried to show a relaxed appearance as she smiled. It seems that you are satisfied. Then, is it possible to put me down first? Saying that, she twisted her body, which was already full of pain that she almost fell unconscious, and sighed pretending not to care. Honestly, it's kinda uncomfortable hanging on here. I feel like my blood is about to run dry. Peeved. Dull pain suddenly came from her abdomen, Charlotte feeling the urge to vomit rising, and couldn't help but vomit out a mouthful of fresh blood that was mixed with broken pieces of internal organs. She slowly lowered her head, looking bewildered. Underneath her body, a fist-thick, hideous black tentacle pierced through her stomach and was twitching and stirring madly inside. On the other side of the tentacle, there is Countess Castell who is smiling but no emotion in her eyes. Feeling the rapidly dissipating life force, Charlotte's eyes widened, feeling confused and unfair. The old woman let out a chilling laugh. Why, of course, it's to follow the ritual and continue the sacrifice. As she said that, her expression became hideous, bloodthirsty and crazy. Oh, unexpected joy, you're right, you really are my unexpected joy. An otherworldly soul, this is an existence that is 100 times more precious than a saint's true spirit. What is a holy saint? As long as I sacrifice your blood, I will surely usher in the Lord's favor and receive unprecedented divine grace. Damn it. Because of this? Charlotte cursed silently. She lifted her head with difficulty and used her last bit of strength to pull out a smile at the old woman. All right, you motherfucker. Countess Castell frowned. Although she didn't understand the other party's weird vocabulary, she instinctively felt that it wasn't a good word. Looking at the red moon that was getting fuller and fuller outside the skylight, she grinned cruelly. The auspicious time has come. Oh, my unexpected joy. Enjoy your last scarlet moonlight. After saying that, Charlotte saw her putting down the dark cross and raising the blood-red remnants of the page high, and the light on her body increased. Charlotte only feels that she is locked by a bizarre power that is hard to describe in words, and instantly loses control of her body. The blood in her body gradually churned, and the hideous wound in her abdomen seemed to be constantly burning. That was the sign of the start of the sacrifice ritual. Damn it, just 2 days after transmigrated, she was about to die. Perhaps there was no one more miserable than herself among the transmigrator. Charlotte sighed inwardly. If only she had known it would be like this. After transmigrating, she shouldn't have been so reserved. She should have taken the time to study her new body first. Lost in such thoughts, time seemed to slow down as never before. Meanwhile, Countess Castell and her undead's depraved prayers slowly reached Charlotte's ears. Wandering ruler of the abyss in the present world. The embodiment of depravity and decay. Savior of the blood descendants. The great bloodborne demon Archduke, Abaddon. Thy humble servant hereby prays for favors. I am willing to offer the most precious bloodline of the Castell family and souls from other realms, praying for you to grant eternal youth and vitality to your humble servants. This prayer seems somewhat familiar. Just as Charlotte's consciousness began to blur, her vision suddenly brightened. Amidst crimson light, a series of ancient and strange characters slowly appeared before her eyes. Gospel of Blood detects an ongoing divine ritual. Ritual name, Blood Sacrifice Ritual. Offering, Charlotte de Castell. Sacrificer, Elaine de Castell. Recipient, Bloodborne Demon Archduke, Abaddon. Ritual effect. Using one's bloodline as an offering, the sacrificer gains the power of their bloodline and life force, while the recipient gains their soul and memories. Interception probability assessment, 100%. Would you like to intercept? Charlotte. Chapter 3, Who the Hell Are You? Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. The golden finger might be late, but it will never be absent. When she saw the novel-like dialogue box in her field of vision, Charlotte knew that she had been saved. Me, being able to intercept the ritual of this old witch? Intercept, it had to be intercepted. Charlotte, who was getting more and more exhausted, no longer had the extra energy to think more. She knew very well that she couldn't hold on any longer, and the breath of death was approaching. Charlotte made her choice without hesitation. Error. Interception, failed. Gospel information missing. Self-repair initiated. Repair completed. Owner of the gospel. Please reformulate your unique symbol. Charlotte. The text continues to change, but the ritual does not stop. Charlotte feels as if she is connected to something. An illusory piece of parchment appeared in her vision, and various patterns changed within her mind. Phew. Why is it so troublesome? Charlotte, who is getting more and more unfocused, is about to go crazy. She knew that if she didn't stop the sacrifice ritual, she would die. Biting the tip of her tongue, she concentrated the last bit of her energy and casually imagined the thorn rose pattern on the top of the bed that greeted her every morning when she got up. Open black lens bracket symbol deployed close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket interception begins close black lens bracket. In a trance, Charlotte only feels a mysterious force suddenly acting on her body. In the sound of muffled prayers, her consciousness became clear again, and her vision changed miraculously. Charlotte is looking at her surroundings again. However, it's no longer from Charlotte's point of view, but a bird's eye view like an observer. She seems to have arrived in a majestic illusory castle, sitting high on the throne of blood, with a blood-colored ancient book floating in front of her. Under the throne, the basement is in full view. The blood-colored magic circle, the chilling cross, the girl who is hung up, the crazy old woman who prayed feverishly. Everything seems to be crawling at her feet. The countess in the middle of the magic circle keeps bowing, under Charlotte's gaze. It feels like she worshipping Charlotte herself. A strange condescending feeling like looking down on the ants appears in Charlotte's heart, making her feel that she is the master of everything. A new dialogue box slowly emerges. Successfully intercept the bloodline sacrifice ritual. The recipient of the ritual has been changed to Charlotte de Castell. Shall the procedure be terminated or modified? Looking at the new text, the girl's eyes widened. Thinking back to the old witch's hideous smile just now, the aggrieved anger turned in her heart again. Charlotte did not hesitate and shouted in her consciousness. Modify. I want it to be modified. Swap the offering with the sacrificer. The offering is her, and the sacrificer is me. Want to sacrifice my soul? Dream on. Let's see who sacrifices whom. Countess Castell is thrilled. It's been a decade. She has been preparing for this day for a decade. As long as she completes this bloodline sacrifice ceremony, she will be able to successfully acquire the gifted bloodline of Castell family, bid farewell to old age, and regain her youth. Not only that, but as long as she successfully sacrifices this otherworldly soul, she is more likely to receive a gift from her Lord. That's the legendary divine grace. A divine grace that mortals dream of. Once obtained, she will possess incredible powers and become the legendary apostle of the gods. Thinking of the bright future, the Countess of Castell became more and more excited. Oh great demonic bloodborne archduke, cast your sights. She raised high the blood-colored page and called out feverishly. The magic circle shines brightly, and the blood-colored moonlight pours down, forming a crimson mist. An ancient and vast aura slowly converged in the basement, as if some terrifying and mysterious existence traveled through countless time and space, casting its gaze at this moment. Here it comes. The gaze of the gods is coming. The Countess's breathing turns heavy. She looks up with difficulty, looking through the layers of fog, her gaze more fanatic than ever. She saw amidst the blood-colored mist, a majestic illusory throne was gradually conjured. Above the throne, scarlet light is gathering, as if an ancient and majestic existence is descending slowly. My lord. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. It's my lord. My lord's eyes are on me. The Countess' eyes widened. She held her breath, her face flushed, her whole body trembled, and her eyes were full of anticipation. The brilliance gathers and condenses into a human form, and then, she saw a familiar petite figure. The Countess. Charlotte? She was stunned. At the same time, Charlotte, who was sitting on the throne, smiled at her and spoke with her soothing and ethereal voice. My dear grandmother, your sacrifice. I will take it. The magic circle suddenly lit up, and crimson light rose into the sky. In the Countess' stunned gaze, blood-colored light instantly swallowed herself. H. Countess Castell let out a heart-rending wail of pain, her already old body quickly aging and withering under the bloody glow. At the same time, Charlotte on the cross feels an abundant warm current akin to rain after a long drought pouring into the wound in her lower abdomen. A warm and strange power continued to swim through her body, and the fatal wound quickly began to heal. It's an amazing feeling. It's hard to put into words. If I really want to say it, it's like being in a warm and comfortable bath, and it's like the afterglow after some kind of intense workout. Refreshing, intoxicating, utterly captivating. Charlotte seems to be a hungry glutton, greedily snatching and devouring everything from Countess Castell. No, don't take away my power. Don't take away my power. You, no way, who are you? Who the hell are you? Countess Castell screams frantically and struggles incessantly. However, the crimson light seems conscious and keeps imprisoning her to death. When the sacrifice ritual begins, it can never be stopped. Stop, please stop. Demon, you damn demon. My lord will not let you go. My lord will never let you go. Gradually the voice of Countess Castell grew quieter and the movements of her struggle became weaker. Finally, after about 5 minutes of being devoured, she lost her movement completely. Fear permeates the surroundings. The terrifying aura dissipated instantly, and with a series of plopping sounds, the living corpses of the maids and waiters who were kneeling around the circle fell to the ground one after another. As if they had lost the strength that supported themselves, they turned into ordinary rotten corpses. In the circle, the light slowly fades away, revealing Countess Castell that were wrapped in it. She had been reduced to a dehydrated, dried corpse. Her shriveled face still retained her horror and confusion. The moonlight outside the skylight is obscured by the clouds again, and the magic circle on the ground is dimmed. In the entire basement, only Charlotte is left alive. The wound on her abdomen has completely gone, not even a single scar remains, only the horrific bloodstains remained. And her expression is still a little intoxicated. That wonderful devouring seems to be addictive, and the girl at this moment actually feels a strong sense of loss and unfulfillment. She felt as if she had taken some powerful tonic, her mind became faster and clearer than ever, and her body seemed to have an inexhaustible amount of energy, as if she could break free from the cross at any moment. More. I still want more. Hunger and thirst, which are difficult to describe in words, along with strong addiction, came to her heart. Charlotte swallows a mouthful of non-existent saliva, forcibly suppressing the throbbing that seemed to come from her body's instinct. She didn't like the feeling of being addicted to drugs. Fortunately, the hunger and thirst only lasted for a moment before disappearing. She closes her eyes and lets out a long breath. Finally, it's over. At this moment, the locked iron door of the basement is suddenly smashed open. In the stirring dust, 4 or 5 knights in black robes, armed with crosses and silver swords, rush in. The leader held up a parchment, and his voice was cold and serious. Countess Castell, we are the Knights of the Order of Demon Hunters. Based on real name report, we have reason to suspect that you have been contaminated as a bloodborne, and having relation to the bloodborne case in Boulder City during this time, and attempting to sacrifice your granddaughter, Charlotte de Castell, you. Before he could finish his words, the tragic scene in front of him directly stopped him. A huge blood-colored circle, hundreds of corpses that have been decomposing for an unknown amount of time. Fallen in the circle, the corpse of a woman who could be vaguely identified as having the identity of a noble woman, and the beautiful girl on the blood-stained cross, covered in bruises, rags, and looks pitiful. Seeing the stranger who broke into the basement, Charlotte was also slightly stunned. However, she is quick to react. Misty tears instantly surge into her watery eyes, and the girl sobs in a weak, delicate and pitiful voice. Woo you 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 a. Painful, it's so painful. Mr. Knight, I'm in so much pain, I'm so scared. Woo woo woo. Chapter 4, I'm a Bloodborne? Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. How's she doing? She is awake and Miss Lottie is feeding her lunch. How about her wound, meow? It's not a simple case, you know, we don't dare to treat that rashly. Only Captain can surely check it. Kara, that guy is indeed fine, but it's a pity that she is a little too persistent in chasing Bloodborne, even to the point of being excessive. Meow. There is no other way, Captain has always been like that. Your Excellency niece, with all due respect, can you speak without the meow? Meow, sorry, I'm used to it, ahem, how is she mentally? She was still dazed a bit, after all, she just experienced such a horrible thing last night. Hey, she's only 14 years old. It's 15 years old, and yesterday was her birthday. Hell, what a poor child, I heard that she was the only survivor left in the entire Castell Manor. It's hard to say, there were no offerings that survived in the previous Bloodborne cases. Didn't you say that the stupid Bloodborne had drawn the sacrificial circle upside down? It's not that simple, this incident has already alarmed the higher-ups, the High Priest and the Duke are quite enraged, and the Inquisition is ready to intervene. Damn, those madmen in the Inquisition are trying to reach out to our demon hunter jurisdiction. A distinct audible conversation came from outside the door, one hoarse and the other young and respectful. Although the door is closed and the talker deliberately lowers their voice, Charlotte, who is half lying on the hospital bed, can still hear it clearly. Since last night's sacrifice ritual, her hearing seems to have undergone a qualitative change, and her sensitivity has long surpassed that of ordinary humans. So, do you not know what's going on either? A gentle inquiry sounded in front of her. It backquote us a beautiful and dignified woman who spoke. She is dressed in a black robe, her long brown hair is coiled on one side, she holds a wooden bowl full of thick porridge in one hand, and a soup spoon in the other. Priest Lottie, that's what Charlotte heard from the demon hunters. At the same time, the other party is also the doctor who has been with her since she was transferred from the basement of Castell Manor to the church hospital last night. Meeting Lottie's soft gaze full of concern, Charlotte steeled her mind. As the ultimate beneficiary of the evil ritual, she certainly knew what had happened last night. But these things should never leave her mouth. I don't know. Grandmother suddenly became a monster. It happened so suddenly. Woo woo woo. Charlotte lowered her head slightly, her delicate little face was desolate, and her eyes were faintly red, like a frightened kitten. Looking at the pitiful appearance of the girl, Lottie's heart melted. She sighed, a faint anger flashing in her eyes that were almost overflowing with love, and said hatefully. Those abominable demonic Bloodborne. Demonic, Bloodborne? Charlotte's heart flutters. It was the second time she had heard that word, her being certainly ignorant asked. Bloodborne? Lottie's expression softened, and she patiently explained. You can understand that they are very evil creatures. They fear light and holy power, thirst for blood, live by sucking blood, evil, insane and ferocious. The monster who wanted to sacrifice your blood last night is a Bloodborne. Thirst for blood? Isn't this a vampire? It's hard for Charlotte not to associate the other person's description with certain Western legends from her past life. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Okay, stop thinking so hardly, let's eat some porridge. Looking at the girl who fell silent, Lottie sighed softly. She scoops up the porridge, blows it softly, and then slowly brings it to Charlotte. This is milk porridge, a patient meal from the church hospital, made of cereal, boiled and cooked with milk, eggs, and broth, which is very helpful for your recovery. Lottie soothed with a gentle voice. She seems to enjoy sharing all kinds of knowledge with the young girl. Whenever the girl shows confusion about something, she will patiently explain. Looking at the milk porridge in Lottie's soup spoon, Charlotte obediently opened her mouth and swallowed it. Now her hands and feet are wrapped in bandages and gauze like a mummy. There is no psychological shadow at all about being fed. It's just that, compared to the delicious milk porridge, Charlotte feels that the aroma emanating from the beautiful priest big sister in front of her is more attractive to her. It's not the faint smell in common sense, but more like a tantalizing aroma of delicious food towards a hungry person. Especially when the other party is only one step away from her. That alluring aroma even made Charlotte have an instinctive urge to pounce on the other party, bite through her skin and suck her blood. Outrageous. Why did she want to suck her blood? Charlotte was shocked. It is clear that although she had escaped last night, there had been some unknown mysterious change in her body. This feeling made it difficult for her not to think of what the other party previously said. The thirst for blood. Could it be? I sacrificed the old witch through the ritual, devoured the opponent's power, and became a Bloodborne? Don't be afraid. This is the inside of the Church of the Holy Royal Court, the most sacred place in Boulder City, and those Bloodborns one backquote T dare entering. You backquote re safe here. Looking at the girl's pale face and look of bewilderment, Lottie shows pity and gently strokes her little head. Charlotte. Wait a minute, if everything really turned out to be as she had guessed, wouldn't the church hospital not only be unsafe for her but also dangerous? Realizing this, Charlotte instantly feels uncomfortable and everything in the ward seems to be out of place with her. Fortunately, in the eyes of the demon hunters, she is just an unlucky and pitiful little girl now. They didn't seem to notice the changes in the girl's body, and Charlotte hoped that the demon knights would never notice the changes in her body. Charlotte shrank slightly, but accidentally touched her wound and couldn't help but hiss. Lottie's gaze is even more pitying. She gently and carefully pinches the corner of the quilt for the girl and looks apologetic. It hurts, doesn't it? Sorry, you've gone through the Bloodborne ritual, so I don't dare to rush to perform divine healing on you. But don't worry, Captain Kara is the strongest demon hunter in the branch of Boulder City, and she has reached the peak of Silver Moon the second rank at a young age, and her divine healing skills are quite excellent. When she returns, I will help her carefully examine your body, remove the erosion and treat the injury. Don't worry, you'll be healed and discharged from the hospital in a week at most, and there won't be any traces of scar. Charlotte. She was depressed. The changes that had taken place in her body made her feel that she could not handle the scrutiny. She also didn't know what kind of chemistry the so-called divine healing technique would have when facing the Bloodborne. In particular, the other party is still a demon hunter with the moniker of the strongest. Religion is often accompanied by fanaticism, not to mention that her current verdict is likely to be evil. And the end of evil is. Charlotte doesn't dare to gamble. She has to save herself, prevent any physical examination and find a way to get out of here. And she shouldn't be doubted. It's hard to get out of here. The same is true for preventing physical examinations. Then, the only thing she can do is to find a way to hide the changes in her body. To do this, she first had to figure out how the so-called physical examination is done. Physical examination, physical? Charlotte's beautiful blue eyes widened. She tilts her head slightly and appropriately makes a blank expression. After a short time together, she has already discovered that as long as she shows such an ignorant and stupid expression, the priest lady would begin to explain patiently. She needs this explanation to get more information from the opponent. Sure enough, Lottie smiled and said, the so-called physical examination is actually a kind of divine ritual. It is the power of God that examines your body. There are no after effects, and it does not invade your privacy. Of course, in order to learn more about this Bloodborne case, the church may ask you some details about last night. Chapter 5, Gospel of Blood. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. After feeding Charlotte lunch, Lottie left. As a priestess at the church hospital, she was always busy. The ward was now empty except for Charlotte, but her keen perception told her that there was a demon hunter standing outside the door. That strong presence was even greater than the pressure her grandmother had given her last night. Obviously, although the demon hunters rescued Charlotte, the only survivor, from the cross last night, they still didn't trust her. The demon hunter outside the door was both a protector and an observer. Even though she had successfully escaped the blood sacrifice from her grandmother last night, the girl's survival was still not completely assured. However, after listening to the explanation from Priest Lottie just now, Charlotte fell into contemplation. Divine ritual? Divine ritual. This was the second time Charlotte encountered this term. The first time was during the blood sacrifice. She clearly remembered that the ancient characters that appeared in her vision referred to the blood sacrifice as a divine ritual. Not only that, she successfully intercepted and modified the sacrificial ritual. In the end, Charlotte was able to survive thanks to that sudden and magical ability. This also led her to wonder. The blood sacrifice was a divine ritual, and the body inspection at the demon hunting hall was also a divine ritual. Then, was it possible for her to intercept the upcoming body inspection just like she did in the basement last night? This thought made Charlotte's heart pound. She seemed to see a glimmer of hope. That mysterious ability might be her cheat after transmigrating. However, she was still not clear about what this cheat was and how to activate it. But she remembered the name mentioned in those strange characters. The item that detected the blood sacrifice and successfully intercepted it. Or more accurately, the blood red book that appeared beside her when she entered that strange state last night. A sense of excitement originating from her heart, Charlotte almost blurted out. Gospel of Blood. With ups and downs in her pronunciation, it sounded strange. It wasn't a language from the other world that Charlotte inherited after transmigrating. It was even more alien and ancient, but it seemed to come out instinctively from her mouth. As Charlotte silently recited, her vision turned crimson once again. In the depths of her mind, a simple book slowly emerged. With its black-red cover edged in gold, adorned with intricate and mysterious thorn rose patterns, the ancient and mysterious script depicted the name that Charlotte could understand the meaning of. Gospel of Blood. The Gospel of Blood. Charlotte's spirits lifted. The book that appeared in her mind was the same one that had appeared beside her in that strange state last night. As the Gospel of Blood shone brightly, its heavy cover opened by itself. Unlike its heavy appearance, the Gospel of Blood seemed to have been torn and divided, with most of its content lost. Behind the cover, there were only two sporadic blood-red pages left, which seemed very familiar to Charlotte. Wait, weren't these pages the same blood-colored pages that the old hag held during the sacrifice? Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Countess Castell was dead, and the blood-colored pages in her hands were probably taken away by the demon hunters a long time ago. Even though Charlotte was curious and surprised, there was currently no way for her to investigate. She quickly focused her attention on the remaining two pages of the Gospel of Blood. One page should be the title page, and the other should be the content page. The title page was still intact, with an illustration of a towering castle that seemed to have come to life, making Charlotte feel a bit familiar. Below it, two lines of beautiful golden letters were particularly eye-catching. I stand amid the darkness, looking up at the light that belongs to you. Lilith. Charlotte couldn't help but silently recite it in her heart. The crimson light suddenly burst forth, and Charlotte felt as if she had established some mysterious connection with the book. Under the light, the title page turned over on its own. The golden light kept flickering, and new words slowly appeared on the back of the title page. Gospel of Blood Genesis chapter. I dream of ancient epics and distant memories. I narrate lost myths and primordial ancestors. I chant the songs of bloodborns in the dawn before darkness. Genesis ability unlocked. Master of the Gospel, activated. Blood summoning, cooldown 0%. True ancestor liberation, sealed. Master of the Gospel, Charlotte de Castell. Symbol, thorn rose. Race, bloodborn. Clan and bloodline, shed it, clan of darkness, half-elf. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Transcendent rank, blood acolyte, apprentice rank. Blood resonance, darkness, entry, wild, unmastered, flesh, unmastered, spirit, unmastered, insight, unmastered. Darkness, novice blood embrace, blood spirit arts. Wild, none. Flesh, none. Spirit, none. Insight, none. Blood descendants, 0. Bloodborn, she really was a bloodborn. Looking at the information in front of her, Charlotte felt both delighted and worried. She was delighted that in this extraordinary world with extraordinary powers, she had indeed stepped into the realm of the extraordinary. But she was worried because this identity was definitely something that couldn't see the light of day. Charlotte couldn't understand many of the things that appeared, but she could roughly determine that it was somewhat similar to a personal panel in a system. Blood summoning, true ancestor liberation, are these abilities of the Gospel of Blood? One is in cooldown, and the other is still sealed. Shed it, clan of darkness, is this the division of bloodborn clans? But what in the world is a half-elf bloodline? Apprentice rank, last night, I seized the power of Countess Castell, and what I gained should be the extraordinary power at her level, but it feels a bit weaker than hers. 5 blood resonances should be different directions of development for bloodborn. Charlotte quickly browsed through the information, analyzing her current status. She soon focused her attention on the one power she possessed. Novice blood embrace. As her focus intensified, information about blood embrace appeared in Charlotte's consciousness. Blood embrace, an inherent ability of bloodborn, a basic technique of blood spirit arts. Practitioners could create blood descendants through the embrace, transforming targets into blood thralls or lower-ranking bloodborn. Unfortunately, while this information and ability might be useful in the future, they're not helpful in solving my current crisis. What I need right now isn't this, but the magical ability to intercept divine rituals like I did last night. Charlotte shook her head slowly, withdrawing her gaze from the title page, and looked at the only remaining content page. The content page was blank, with nothing written on it. However, when Charlotte focused her attention, golden letters quickly appeared on it. Gospel of Blood Divine Chapter, damaged. I shall be unstoppable. I shall be dominant. I shall look down on all living beings. Divine Chapter ability unlocked. Divine Ritual Counter, activated. Divine Ritual Counter. As the supreme artifact of Bloodborne, the Gospel of Blood has the ability to detect divine rituals within a certain range passively. It can actively intercept and modify divine rituals of lower levels, but the modification must adhere to the inherent mechanism of the ritual and cannot change its nature or function. This is it. Seeing this description, Charlotte's eyes lit up. Just at that moment, a gentle knock on the door suddenly interrupted the girl's exploration. Accompanying the knocking was the gentle voice of Priest Lottie. Miss Charlotte, Captain Kara has returned. May we come in? Chapter 6. The Church is questioning. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte didn't have a good enough reason to stop the other party from coming in. Even if she did, it would only delay things temporarily, adding suspicion without any other utility. She quickly snapped out of that strange state, repositioning herself on the hospital bed. Pretending to be weak, she said. Cough, please come in. The door was gently pushed open, and the figure of the priest Lottie reappeared. Behind her, followed by 7 or 8 people, making the already not very spacious ward even more crowded. Charlotte's gaze slowly swept over these visitors, easily determining that they should belong to 3 different factions. The 2 people at the front were dressed the same as those who rushed into the basement last night, a man and a woman, presumably the so-called demon hunters. The attire of the 2 people behind them was the same as Lottie's, with the Holy Quartz ring cross emblem on it, presumably also priests from the church hospital. The last few people at the back were much more gorgeously dressed, obviously nobles. The leading figure was quite fat, and Charlotte even felt a sense of familiarity, presumably someone she knew from her original memories, followed by a young noble swordsman. Quickly analyzing the situation, Charlotte's gaze soon fell on the female demon hunter following Lottie. She was a tall woman with shoulder-length black hair tied up in a neat high ponytail. A terrifying scar diagonally crossed her cheek, destroying the beauty she should have had, and making her look extremely ferocious and terrifying. She had no expression on her face, her demeanor was cold, and everyone except Lottie lagged behind her, with several nobles occasionally casting awe and fear-filled glances at her. especially the young noble swordsman among them, who had the most imposing aura and obvious strength, his serious gaze never leaving the female knight. However, strangely, Charlotte didn't feel any pressure from the female knight. Charlotte became even more nervous in an instant, unable to be sensed, yet feared by someone stronger than her. This only indicated that the strength of this female knight had reached a level beyond her reach. Miss Charlotte, this is Captain Kara, a demon hunter of the 2nd tier Silver Moon realm, and also the most promising extraordinary person in the Boulder Principality to enter the 3rd tier, the Blazing Sun realm in a few years, Lottie said gently. Charlotte was not surprised. She had already guessed the identity of the female knight. Suppressing her vigilance and tension, Charlotte made a pitiful appearance. She shrank into the small blanket, her innocent big eyes inadvertently meeting Captain Kara's. Time seemed to stop at that moment. Those were a pair of eyes as cold as icebergs, tinged with a faint silver light. Clear, deep, like a bottomless abyss, yet also like a sword that could penetrate everything, carrying scrutiny and exploration. Just with one glance, Charlotte felt as if she had been stripped naked, as if everything about her had been seen through. The female knight's eyes flashed, and Charlotte felt her image elevated infinitely in her field of vision, surrounded by towering blood seas and desolate bones, as if substantial evil spirits were rushing towards her. She felt as if she were a small boat facing a storm, or a rabbit being stared at by a cheetah on the vast grassland, about to be destroyed and torn apart by an irresistible force at any moment. How many people has she killed? Charlotte was horrified. Kara, you scared her. She's not an interrogation subject. She's a victim, a patient of our hospital. An old voice rang out, with a hint of helplessness. The speaker was one of the 2 church priests who followed closely behind, quite old and seemingly of high rank. The female knight paused for a moment, retracting her gaze. Only then did Charlotte break free from that terrifying sense of oppression. Her chest heaved violently, and her vigilance against the female knight reached the highest level ever. This is definitely a god of death. I'm sorry, Miss Charlotte. Kara has been working at the demon hunting agency for years, accustomed to killing and interrogating, which frightened you, the old priest said apologetically. This is our Dean Raoul, also a 2nd tier Silver Moon. Lottie quickly introduced him to Charlotte. 2nd tier Silver Moon, 3rd tier Blazing Sun. Is this the division of extraordinary powers? What am I now, an apprentice? 0th tier? Charlotte's mind stirred. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Raoul was a kind old man. His white hair and beard, holding a divine staff, exuded a sacred aura all over his body, making Charlotte subconsciously associate him with the white-robed wizard Gandalf from the Lord of the Rings. He took a step forward, stood beside the female knight, first placed his right hand on his chest in the shape of a ring cross, devoutly reciting a sentence of praise the Lord, and then gently comforted. Miss Charlotte, I am Dean Raoul, the dean of the Boulder Church Hospital under the Holy Court. I know that everything you experienced last night must have been frightening and painful, but for your safety, before Kara conducts a body examination, the church still needs to ask you some details. After speaking, he whispered a few words to the priest beside him, and the priest turned around and gestured for the nobles behind to leave. The faces of the nobles instantly didn't look very good. The leading fat noble frowned. Dean Raoul, this incident involves the nobles of the Principality, and we represent the Duke's mansion. We have the right to know about this matter. Dean Raoul rubbed his temples with a headache, looking at the female knight with difficulty. The female knight Kara didn't look back, but her cold and calm voice was unquestionable. Irrelevant people, leave. Brief, indifferent, the nobles didn't move, but Kara glanced at them indifferently. She didn't repeat what she had said, but the unquestionable flavor had once again been poured into her cold gaze and the slightly raised silver sword. Seeing the gleaming silver sword, the nobles all changed color. The young swordsman also looked startled. He frowned, about to say something, but was stopped by the leading fat noble. All right, we'll listen to Lady Kara. The fat noble smiled awkwardly, then frantically signaled to the people around him, forcibly pulling the young swordsman away. Before leaving, he even threw a friendly and brilliant smile at Charlotte. With the nobles gone, only a few church priests and demon hunters remained in the ward. Priest Lottie breathed a sigh of relief. However, the captain's gaze quickly fell on her and the remaining priests and demon hunters. Lottie. Captain Kara, Dean, we'll leave first. She understood the other party's meaning in seconds, smiled bitterly, and left the ward with the remaining priests and demon hunters. In front of Charlotte's bed, only Captain Kara and Dean Raoul remained. This was a strange combination. The nobles obviously feared Kara a lot but seemed somewhat disdainful of Dean Raoul. However, the female knight seemed to respect the old priest very much. There were fewer people, but Charlotte felt the atmosphere become even heavier. Dean Raoul cleared his throat, breaking the inexplicably heavy atmosphere. Then, he looked at Charlotte and smiled, saying, Miss Charlotte, now it's just me and Kara. Please relax, we're just going to ask some simple questions. It's okay if you can't answer, but please don't remain silent, and don't lie. Charlotte peeked her head out from the blanket, like a little animal, nodding gently. That appearance, as if after being frightened, she was trying to act calm and composed like an adult. She must calm down. The more crucial the moment, the less she could reveal her flaws. However, just as Charlotte was mentally prepared, the question from the old priest made her heart tighten again. Miss Charlotte, how did the wound on your abdomen heal? Chapter 7, Body Examination. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Dean Raoul's voice was gentle and soothing. Charlotte, however, felt increasingly nervous. Ever since being rescued, she had harbored a doubt in her heart. That doubt was the fatal wound that had once pierced her abdomen. The wound had healed during the sacrifice, but the bloodstains and visceral fragments scattered on the ground during her injury were unmistakable. There were too many clues to reconstruct the scene. A failed sacrifice, yet the sacrificial victim, fatally wounded, had survived. That was the biggest problem. From last night until now, Charlotte had been pondering how to handle it. And in her mind, she had already formulated a corresponding rhetoric. Thinking of this, the girl took a deep breath, preparing to speak. However, when she looked up, she suddenly felt a chill in her heart. Beside Dean Raoul, the female knight still looked at her calmly. Her gaze was as indifferent and icy as ever. Under the gaze, Charlotte, who was about to explain, had a feeling of being enveloped in surveillance. No, rather, it wasn't a feeling. It was a kind of intuition, and she believed in this intuition. Especially after becoming a member of the Bloodborne, her intuition seemed to have been greatly enhanced. In the depths of her mind, Charlotte had a premonition. In the forthcoming speech, she must avoid telling lies. Thinking of this, Charlotte squeezed the wound in her palm hard, and the intense pain immediately activated her tear glands. A mist spread over Charlotte's eyes, and she turned into that pitiful little cutie again. Monsters. I saw many, many monsters. Grandma tied me up. She said she was going to sacrifice me to the Bloodborne demon Archduke. She turned into a monster. Such a terrifying monster. Sob, sob, sob. As she spoke, tears as big as pearls scattered like beads, pitiful and touching. Even Charlotte herself was surprised at how easily this body could cry. It had its power. The expressionless female knight remained silent, while Dean Raoul's expression softened visibly. And, what about the wound on your body? The old priest asked again, his voice very soft. I heard her begging for mercy, and then she died. But my injuries healed. Charlotte huddled under the blanket, her face full of horror and confusion while saying that. Any explanation or lie had its loopholes. The real rhetoric was to tell the truth but leave the other party without answers and unable to find fault. After waking up, Charlotte had been thinking about how to clear herself of suspicion in the death of Countess Castell. But later, she figured it out. Since she could still lie here as a patient, it meant she was temporarily safe. If her guess was correct, there might be some unknown reason interfering with these people's judgment. Apart from the healed wound, these people probably had no evidence pointing to her as the one responsible for the changes in last night's sacrifice. At most, there were suspicions. Otherwise, they wouldn't be here asking her questions. In this situation, the more one said, the more mistakes one made. It was better to speak some ambiguous truths, and she didn't need to find reasons to explain. After all, she was just a weak, pitiful, helpless, and young victim. What could a frightened little girl remember? Dean Raoul pondered. He glanced at Captain Kara on the other side. The truth. The female knight crossed her arms and said lightly. Damn it, she really could distinguish between truth and falsehood. Charlotte felt a mix of relief and wariness. The old priest nodded. All right, I've finished questioning. Kara, start the body examination and treatment. The highlight is coming. Charlotte's heart tensed. She raised her head and looked quietly at the female knight. Her heart, however, raced uncontrollably. Could the countermeasure against divine magic succeed? Would there be any signs after triggering it? Would intercepting the divine ritual alert the other party? Would she be burned by divine light? She didn't have answers to these questions, but now, she could only focus her energy on the gospel of blood in her consciousness. Captain Kara came to Charlotte's side. One of her hands rested on Charlotte's head, while the other gripped the hilt of her sword. This was an extremely cautious demon hunter. Even now, she was ready to fight at any moment, even in front of a delicate and beautiful, pitiful young girl. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Charlotte held her breath, heightened her vigilance, and looked at the calloused and scarred palm. And Kara's gaze instantly became sharp, her dignified and cold voice resounding. Sacred, fire. The sacred light flourished, blooming in the female knight's palm, quickly turning into golden flames, enveloping Charlotte. Charlotte felt as if burning oil had been poured on her, an unprecedented pain erupted in both her physical and spiritual dimensions. Bloody hell, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Even though she was mentally prepared, Charlotte couldn't help but reveal a painful expression, almost jumping off the bed. In an instant, Dean Raoul's face changed, and Kara's eyes turned cold as she drew her silver sword. This is bad. Charlotte's heart sank. However, just when she thought she was going to face a game over, the familiar crimson light finally burst forth before her eyes, and the ancient and strange characters slowly appeared. Gospel of Blood detects an ongoing divine ritual. Spell name, Sacred Fire. Caster, Kara Duval. Recipient, Charlotte de Castel. Ritual effect. The sacred fire of Lord Harold, capable of burning all entities marked as evil by the Holy Court to ashes. When the sacred fire acts on other entities, especially on the bodies of sacred believers, it will stimulate the target's physical potential, resulting in excellent healing effects. Interception probability judgment, 90%. Proceed with interception? Finally, it's here. Charlotte was both surprised and delighted. Intercept. Ignoring the 10% failure rate, she shouted in her heart without hesitation. Charlotte's luck wasn't bad. The moment she made the decision, the bloodline scripture in her consciousness suddenly radiated a crimson light. Charlotte felt as if an invisible protective film had appeared on the surface of her body. Although she still felt hot and uncomfortable, the burning pain disappeared. Divine fire successfully intercepted. Proceed to terminate or modify the ritual? Modify the ritual judgment. Judge the recipient as not evil. Instead, a devout believer of the Holy Court. Charlotte commanded in her heart. Successfully intercepting the divine magic ritual was a big step towards victory. But it wasn't enough. Since she was going to be investigated, she wanted to take this opportunity to completely clear herself of suspicion, especially the suspicion of being a member of the bloodline. And the best way to do that was to let the church personnel handle it personally. Ask yourself, what identity would make the church feel more at ease than a devout believer of the Holy Court? With Charlotte's command, the gospel of blood in her consciousness once again shone brightly, and its hidden rhythm acted on her body. In Charlotte's perception, the sacred fire enveloping her suddenly underwent a miraculous change. It was still fire, but in Charlotte's perception, it was no longer scorching hot, but gentle like a breeze. It was like the sunlight in spring shining on her body. Charlotte felt a warm power surging into her body, stimulating her physical potential and repairing her injuries. At the same time, Charlotte also noticed that the gospel in her consciousness emitted a faint halo, seemingly absorbing the power of the sacred fire. The scripture opened on its own, and the golden characters on it flickered slightly. And on the opposite side of the title page, the blood summoning section, the cooldown rate, was no longer a gray 0%, but slowly increasing. 1%, 2%, 3%. Charlotte's spirits lifted. She never expected that after modifying the judgment of the sacred fire, this divine magic could still energize her scripture. Excitement spread. She was not afraid anymore but hoped that the other party's divine magic would last longer, so she could absorb more wool to replenish her scripture. The joyful and enjoyable expression didn't need to be hidden. Moreover, Charlotte deliberately acted more exaggeratedly, showing a fanatical and devout appearance, pushing the boat along and praising the sacred fervently. Seriously, Oscar really owed her a little golden man. Seeing the radiant sacred fire enveloping Charlotte and the girl's excited and fanatical expression, Dean Raoul's expression gradually relaxed, and Captain Kara quietly put down the silver sword she had raised. Charlotte knew she had passed the test. Chapter 8, Mysterious Symbol. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Your dark corruption has been purified, but your injuries have not fully healed yet. You need to rest quietly for the next steps. Although the treatment effect of sacred fire is good, you are still young and should not rely on it too much, as it will consume your body's potential. For the next few days, you can eat more meat products to replenish your nutrition. If necessary, you can ask Lottie to perform sacred healing to accelerate the healing of your wounds. Lottie is my student, and her sacred healing skills are superb. Although not as good as Kara's, they are much gentler. Oh, by the way, Miss Charlotte, have you heard of sacred healing? The physical examination ended, and Dean Raoul stood kindly by the bedside, chatting with Charlotte incessantly. At first, he advised on dietary and treatment matters during the wound recovery period. But as he talked about sacred healing, it seemed like he opened some kind of wonderful switch, becoming a chatterbox like a machine gun, incessantly talking about various divine medical techniques to treat injuries. From discussing the efficacy of sacred healing to its origins, then from its origins to the developers of divine magic. From the developers of divine magic to the history of the Holy Court, and from the history of the Holy Court to the customs of the continent. At this moment, Charlotte somewhat understood why Lottie, who took care of her, liked to educate and chat so much. It turned out to be passed down from master to disciple. Raoul kept talking. Charlotte listened obediently. Sometimes, she even made a curious baby-like expression, skillfully acting cute while fishing for information. She also hoped to learn more about the common knowledge of this world. After all, her original memories about this aspect were completely blank. This world was not ordinary at all. During the 3 days since she transmigrated, Charlotte felt enlightened because her original grandmother had never taught her this common knowledge, only some noble etiquette. Oh, wait, noble etiquette was also taught by the steward. She hadn't turned into a zombie back then. Speaking of which, this world is called Myria, a world with gods and extraordinary beings. The gods protect all living beings, forming beliefs and differentiating into various churches. The extraordinary beings rule the world, establishing countries for the powerful and the noble. Charlotte was in a feudal kingdom called the Crescent Kingdom in the western part of the continent. The title she was to inherit was the Countess of Castel, and her lord was Duke Boulder of the kingdom's 9 dukes. By the way, in history, the Crescent Kingdom was once subverted by the Bloodborne, so the entire kingdom, from top to bottom, was very vigilant against the Bloodborne. The nobles control the extraordinary power, firm and deeply rooted in people's hearts, but they also have to yield to faith. The gods are the masters of all things, and faith is the foundation of everything. The power of the extraordinary comes from the gods, and the power of kingship is also blessed by the gods. All glory belongs to the gods. The Holy Court is the largest church force in the world of Myria, a multi-god faith centered around the Lord Harold, the creator god. Charlotte listened attentively to Dean Raoul's education. This knowledge was essential for her to quickly familiarize herself with this world. However, she did not fully accept all the knowledge that the old priest talked about. Dean Raoul always kept mentioning Lord Harold, obviously having his own biases. Although there were indeed gods in this world, having studied the history of Earth, Charlotte knew what kind of goods religions were, and the words of this old priest were definitely beautified. But it didn't matter. Charlotte only needed to get a general idea. What Dean Raoul talked about was much richer than the memories she inherited. It even made Charlotte somewhat doubt whether the original owner had been kept as a canary in the manor all these years. She didn't even know about the currency units. When she heard something interesting, Charlotte even took the initiative to ask some deeper questions, making Dean Raoul's eyes light up, and his enthusiasm increased even more. The old priest enthusiastically educated, gradually shifting the topic to the doctrine of the Holy Court. It was different when he began talking about doctrine. At this moment, Dean Raoul seemed to transform into an old scholar reciting scriptures. Although he looked enthusiastic and excited, the content he spoke of became boring and sleepy, making people want to doze off. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. It's not that he didn't speak well. It's just that for Charlotte, who had a preconceived notion and was an absolute atheist, it was like talking to a brick wall. Charlotte felt dizzy listening, completely losing her previous interest, but she still had to pull herself together and listen attentively, showing a respectful and fanatical expression. There was no other way. After all, she had just modified the ritual to designate herself as a devout believer of the Holy Court. This was a really painful process. She felt like she was the Monkey King with a tight headband around her head. The kind-looking old priest in front of her slowly overlapped with Master Sanzang in movies and TV shows. The tall priest's hat was the 5 Tathagatas, his priestly robe was the Kasaya, and the priest's staff in his hand was the Zen stick. It's really two alike. Charlotte felt drowsy listening, but the old priest became more and more enthusiastic. He became more and more excited as he spoke, and finally, he even grabbed Charlotte's hand and started preaching on the spot, asking if Charlotte had any interest in joining the church and becoming a probationary priest. How about it, Miss Charlotte? Your faith is so devout. I can serve as your introducer and recommend you to enter the church school for further study. Charlotte instantly woke up. Listening to the doctrine was okay, but if she really became a priest, that would be too stimulating. A weak and helpless newborn bloodborne believing in a God-centered religion aiming to eradicate evil? Isn't this seeking death? Although for a moment she was also a little tempted, after all, after joining the church, she would have the opportunity to continue to leech energy during the ritual. But Charlotte remained relatively calm. The power of divine ritual counter had its limits. Deceiving a divine ritual and becoming a priest were not the same thing. Charlotte could deceive the sacred fire, but she couldn't use the sacred fire. If she really joined the church, she might be exposed in front of more powerful priests. Moreover, becoming a priest might also bring disputes over her inheritance rights to the territory. The risks were too great. However, directly refusing seemed to contradict the devout believer persona that Charlotte had just established. Charlotte was caught in a dilemma. Raoul, it's time to go. The female knight glanced coldly at the old priest. Her cold and indifferent voice, at this moment, sounded so pleasant to Charlotte's ears. Dean Raoul was slightly stunned, only then realizing that he had gotten a little carried away. Sorry, I got a little carried away. His old face turned red, and he cleared his throat, returning to the dignified appearance of a respected elder, kindly saying, Miss Charlotte, thank you very much for your cooperation. Please rest well, and please consider my proposal. May the Lord be with you, and I wish you a speedy recovery and discharge from the hospital. After saying that, he drew a cross on his chest, and together with the female knight, turned to leave. However, just as he took a step, he stopped again. Oh, right, there's one more thing. Dean Raoul slapped his forehead. He took out a piece of parchment from his pocket and unfolded it in front of Charlotte, solemnly asking, Miss Charlotte, have you seen this symbol before? Charlotte's heart tightened when she looked over. On the parchment, there was the thorn rose pattern she imagined last night when intercepting the sacrifice. Chapter 9, Charlotte's Weapon. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Do they know about this pattern? Could it be that they have discovered something? A chill ran through Charlotte's heart. The gaze of Knight Commander Kara fell on Charlotte once again, shimmering faintly with silver. Charlotte knew that she still couldn't lie next. Fortunately, she had anticipated this situation. The young girl took a deep breath and tilted her head slightly, her golden bangs lifting to reveal a slightly innocent and silly expression. Huh? This pattern seems familiar. Let me think about it. Dean Raoul's gaze slightly intensified, becoming more solemn. Oh, I remember now. I've seen it. Charlotte slapped her head, feigning realization. When? Where? Dean Raoul asked. His voice was urgent and serious, and even Kara's gaze was fixed firmly on the girl. Charlotte became more certain that they had definitely discovered something, but they probably hadn't suspected her yet. She sweetly smiled, revealing a pair of charming dimples, her clear blue eyes innocent as she said. It was a long time ago. We have many patterns like this in our estate. A lot of the decorations on the furniture are like this. He, my bed canopy is like this too. I quite like it, haha. What she said was true. Raoul. Kara. The old priest's expression was slightly unnatural, as if the anger he had just raised was stuck in his chest. However, soon, he seemed to think of something, and his expression changed slightly again, gradually becoming solemn. He once again placed his right hand over his chest in a cross and bowed slightly. Miss Charlotte, thank you very much for the information you provided. If you remember any more relevant information, please inform me through Lottie as soon as possible. Seeing his solemn expression, Charlotte's heart stirred. She skillfully put on the harmless curious baby expression, slightly twisting her body, and coquettishly asked. Grandpa Raoul, is there something wrong with this pattern? With her cute big eyes and sweet voice, coupled with a hint of coquettishness, her charm was irresistible. Not to mention just Charlotte's delicate and lovely doll-like appearance was enough to melt anyone. Grandpa. The old priest felt as if he had been shocked, unable to help but shiver, his mind filled only with the sweet voice and large innocent eyes of the girl. Facing the cute little face and the innocent trusting gaze of the girl, he felt it was difficult, as an elder, to lie to such an adorable junior. After all, who could resist the closeness and trust of a little cutie? Listen carefully, she called him Grandpa. The old priest's expression softened almost instantly, like an old chrysanthemum that had been blooming for many years. Even his aged cheeks seemed to flush red. Such an obvious change even surprised Charlotte, the instigator. Wow, so, she could be very lethal to Grandpa if she seriously sold her cuteness. Charlotte felt like she had discovered a new world. Cough. The female knight coughed lightly, instantly waking Raoul up. Dean Raoul immediately felt embarrassed. He slightly made his expression solemn, reverting back to the sacred appearance of a priest, and said gently and seriously. Charlotte, this pattern is very dangerous. In the future, you must forget about it, never draw it, understand? Even the old priest himself didn't notice that he had already stopped addressing her as Miss, instead calling her by her name directly. And his tone, even gentler. I understand. I'll be good. Grandpa Raoul Tilda. Charlotte nodded obediently, looking quite adorable. She had gradually immersed herself in the role, and even her cute act was becoming more and more skilled. The old priest couldn't help but shiver, not from being cheesy, but rather from being pleased. However, as a priest, he didn't want to lose his composure. After entrusting the girl with some instructions, he quickly bid farewell to the female knight and left, looking a bit like he was fleeing. This time, they really left. If I had a granddaughter, she would be about her age now, wouldn't she? Leaving the patient room, Dean Raoul's expression still carried a hint of reminiscence. Did you hear that? Just now she called me Grandpa. She's so adorable. He seemed to be talking to himself, but it also seemed like he was speaking to the female knight beside him, his expression full of emotion. However, the female knight remained silent as ever. Dean Raoul quickly becomes bored. Kara, this is something you're not good at, always so serious and quiet. He shook his head slightly, slowly retracting his smile. His expression gradually became serious. Things might be a bit troublesome. Boulder Church Hospital, Office of the Priest. A group of hospital priests and demon hunter knights gathered around a table, listening intently to a story. Meow, you guys have no idea how shocking it was at the time. After seeing those undead, it really scared the shit out of me. That wealthy Castell Manor turned out to be a den of demons. And those undead seem to have been transformed for a long time, quite well hidden indeed. A bloodborne that's weaker than first tier could transform so many undead, it can only be said. It's truly the works of the cursed tome. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. If it weren't for this cat body able to run fast, I would have gone to meet the chief god already. He, but the little one from the Castell family is quite cute, indeed worthy of the legendary beautiful family. This self was almost smitten, no wonder she was hidden by that bloodborne for so many years. The one telling the story was a black cat, with a hoarse voice. Its human-like face showed a bit of smugness, like an uncle that likes to boast. Its body was extremely fat, sitting on the table. At first glance, it looked like a pig disguised as a cat. When Dean Raoul and Demon Hunter Captain Kara entered, this was the scene they saw. The female knight frowned slightly. Dean Raoul also looked helpless. He cleared his throat a few times, and the priests and demon hunters turned back instinctively, then quickly saluted and stepped aside, making way for the two. Lord Raoul, Lady Kara. Seeing Raoul and Kara, the black cat perked up. It twisted its fat body and jumped down, walking in front of the two, somewhat cutely. Meow, is it over? How is it? Kara's gaze swept over Lottie and the others. The priests and demon hunters immediately understood and left one after another. She hasn't been contaminated, although her body has some dark erosion. It has been purified by Kara. Dean Raoul closed the door and said, Meow, that's strange. This cat hasn't heard of anyone who has accepted the power of the Bloodborne and hasn't been contaminated, let alone she's a sacrifice. The black cat raised its back legs and to scratch his head, somewhat puzzled. But because it was too fat, even if it raised its legs, it couldn't reach its body, completely scratching in vain, looking extremely comical. Kara has carefully examined the sacrificial array. Charlotte is not a sacrifice. The sacrifice is Countess Castell. Also, niece, you need to lose weight. Dean Raoul shook his head. Lose weight? Oh, no, this cat's figure is obviously healthy. Many young girls like it. The black cat patted its almost touching the ground belly, looking dissatisfied. After speaking, it licked its paw, somewhat puzzled, and said, It's strange, this cat knows about sacrificial formation. Even if Charlotte isn't a sacrifice, as the core of the array, the blood cross is still the key to activating the sacrifice, and she's a medium. Raoul, you know, the activation of bloodline sacrifices means the death of the medium. This is why Kara and I need to personally investigate. She survived, it's probably because some entity saved her, and we need to find out what that is. Dean Raoul and Kara exchanged glances and said, Some entity? So you mean, you've already determined that the sacrificial formation was not set up by that stupid bloodborne who mixed up the sacrificer and the sacrifice? The black cat suddenly became interested, its tail gently tapping the ground. This is the question I'm going to address next, niece. I have something I need you to look at. Dean Raoul said solemnly. Saying that, he took out the parchment he had just shown Charlotte from his pocket and placed it in front of the black cat. What is this? Seeing the thorn rose pattern on the parchment, it was somewhat puzzled. This is the imprint of the sacrificial mark that Kara copied from the sacrificial formation. Dean Raoul said. Sacrificial mark? Damn, Raoul, do you know what you're talking about? This is a symbol. A symbol. The black cat jumped up instantly. To be able to incorporate the sacrificer's mark as part of the sacrificial formation, it must use the blood and true name of the sacrificer. And only gods can use symbol as the mark of the formation. In this world, who would dare to use the symbol of a god as the mark of the sacrificer? Letting gods be the sacrificer? That is disrespectful and blasphemous to the gods. Gods will not allow such formation to operate. Do you mean to say that last night it was some god personally presiding over the blood sacrifice? I think you're crazy. Dean Raoul fell silent. The black cat suddenly had a bad feeling. Wait, what's with that expression of yours? Dean Raoul sighed. Kara, bring out the copy of the sacrificial target from last night. Kara nodded slightly and took out the second parchment from her pocket, placing it in front of the black cat. The black cat cautiously unfolded the parchment, then its amber eyes widened instantly. Only to see the parchment, depicting the same thorn rose symbol as the sacrificer from earlier. Nice. Dean Raoul spoke again. His expression became unusually serious, his voice incredibly solemn. Do you know why this bloodborne case alarmed the Grand Archbishop and the Duke so quickly? Why, isn't it because the Castell family is too famous? They're so wealthy, generation after generation of renowned beauties in the kingdom, and they're even a branch of the Boulder family. No. Dean Raoul shook his head. Because the god bell of Boulder Church's town rang. Last night, an evil god was resurrected. Chapter 10, Resurrected Evil God. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Outside the window, the sun hung high, but inside the office, Nice felt a chill in his hands and feet, shivering all over. His fur stood slightly on end as his hoarse voice trembled a bit. An evil god? Damn, so, are you saying that last night's sacrifice awakened an evil god? Dean Raoul nodded. More accurately, it's very likely that Lady Castell had contacted something before the sacrifice, drawing the attention of certain entities. He exchanged a glance with the female knight, their expressions turned serious. The conversation with the young lady from the Castell family just now confirmed this. Similar symbols have long appeared in Castell Manor. Meow, forgive me for being blunt, are you sure this is true? To me, this pattern looks more like the furniture patterns popular in Korea. The black cat picked up the parchment and turned it over, feeling it resembled the decor on its imported cat bed from the kingdom of Korea. That was a gift from a priestess at the church academy. Nice, be serious, this is not a joke. Dean Raoul's expression was stern. With a long sigh, he continued. Actually, this is the most terrifying part. If this symbol has appeared long ago, do you know what that means? It means that the mysterious god may have been planning its resurrection for a long time. As for Countess Castell, perhaps unknowingly, she has already been tainted by another evil god. We speculate that she thought she was offering sacrifice to the bloodborne demon duke, but in fact, from the beginning, she was sacrificing to another sleeping evil god. The symbol she drew was not the bloodborne demon duke's divine symbol from the start, but this pattern. And this mysterious evil god likely used this sacrifice to successfully descend into the world in the guise of the sacrificer. Hearing Raoul's words, Nice couldn't sit still. Meow, this is a big deal. No wonder I heard that the Inquisition is going to intervene. Such a dangerous matter. Didn't the district high priest going to report it to Archbishop? It paused, then quickly answered its own question. Of course not. The high priest will have a chance to compete for the position of Archbishop in less than a year. Once successful, he can leave this poor place behind. He definitely doesn't want any accident during this crucial time that his competitors could use against him. He'll try to suppress this news as much as possible and let his subordinates handle it themselves. Even if he delays his responsibility, once he's promoted, it won't be his problem anymore. The only bright side is, recently revived evil gods are generally weak. As long as we can find it, even mortals have a chance to banish it again before it fully recovers. Suddenly realizing something, it paused. Wait a minute, so, from the beginning, you weren't checking on the girl's injuries, but suspected that she, completely unscathed, was actually the descending evil god? Meow, you were investigating her true identity, checking if she was possessed by the evil god? Dean Raoul and Kara exchanged a glance, nodding slightly. That's right. And the result? She should be fine now, otherwise you wouldn't be here chatting with me. Yes, she passed the test of the sacred fire. She's a devout believer and a good girl. A devout believer? But as far as I know, the heir of the Castell family has been weak since childhood, barely leaving the estate these years. She hasn't even attended the Noble Academy. How could she become a believer? Nice was puzzled. Perhaps, it's because of Countess Castell's influence. She has hidden her identity as a bloodborne for years and openly appeared as a devout believer, donating a lot of gold to the church hospital. Dean Raoul shook his head. That makes sense. Nice also found this explanation reasonable. Extending its paw, it scrutinized the symbol on the parchment again. So, the next task is to find this hidden evil god, right? That won't be easy. As a well-traveled cat, I know that it's hard to find evil gods once they hide. Carelessness could lead to the emergence of an evil cult a dozen years later. Damn, if what you said is true, Coria might already have one. Dean Raoul nodded. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. That's right, but its condition should not be good, or rather, very poor. As long as it wants to recover its strength, it will definitely show itself. It healed Charlotte, so it probably isn't one of those crazily chaotic evil gods. These gods generally have certain boundaries and lean more towards order. But it's still an evil god, an enemy of the Holy Court, something that needs to be sealed and banished. Nice reminded solemnly. I know that. Dean Raoul nodded slightly. He put away the parchment, pondering. The blood demon cult has been restless recently, likely planning something big. If this resurrected evil god finds out, it won't miss this opportunity. If the church handles it properly, it's also an opportunity to wipe out the bloodborne influence hidden in Boulder. And if we're lucky, we might even seal and banish this mysterious evil god, killing two birds with one stone. Nice had a thought. Wait, was the girl's injury healed by the evil god? It's just speculation, and the most likely one. Nice's cat face turned serious. Raoul, every move of the gods has a purpose. If it healed the heir of the Castell family, it means she had caught that god's attention. Have someone keep an eye on her. The key to finding this evil god may very well lie with that girl. But beware of those foolish nobles. They're a bunch of greedy jackals. Also, each divine symbol is unique, and while history may change, the core of the divine symbol remains unchanged. Thorns, roses. Look into it, find out which ancient god this symbol belongs to. Raoul glanced at the female knight and smiled. You don't have to worry about that. Kara will specifically investigate this matter. Also, nice, your words reminded me, there's one more thing I want to ask of you. Don't wanna? A jar of honey-glazed ridgeback dragon wings from the Northern Duchy. Slurp Tilda, fine, what do you want me to do? Sigh, it's finally over. Charlotte lay on the bed, looking relieved and relaxed. She knew her identity was temporarily safe. The healing effect of the sacred fire was indeed remarkable. Though her hands and feet were still tightly wrapped, she could feel that her wounds had scabbed over. In a few days, she would be able to leave the hospital. However, compared to her soon-to-be healed wounds, Charlotte now had something more interesting on her mind. That was Gospel of Blood, whose origins and abilities she hadn't fully understood yet. This obviously blood-related mysterious book had saved her twice and introduced her to a more mysterious and vast world. And now, Charlotte was filled with intense curiosity about that world. Thinking about it, she closed her eyes and sank back into consciousness. In her mind, the ancient book still floated with a crimson light and a hint of golden radiance. On the Gospel, in the Blood Calling section, the cooldown showed progress reaching 81%. Although she didn't know the specific effects of this ability recorded in the Genesis chapter, referencing the divine ritual counter in the divine chapter, it surely wouldn't disappoint her. Blood Calling, just as the name suggested, Charlotte speculated that this ability was likely to summon some creatures or servants. Now she was alone and weak, so having a few helpers would indeed be a useful card. There's still 19% progress left, and since I have nothing else to do, maybe I can use the church's power in the next few days to recharge it through the sacred fire? That girl named Kara is too dangerous. Maybe I can ask Lottie for help under the pretext of healing? Charlotte pondered, just as she was considering whether she could use Lottie's divine art to treat her injuries and recharge the gospel with church power. A gentle knock on the door sounded again. Miss Charlotte, may I come in? This is Priestess Lottie. Recognizing the voice, Charlotte's spirits lifted. She quickly opened her eyes, huddled under the blanket, and resumed her pitiful and fragile appearance, softly saying, Please, come in. As soon as she spoke, the door was gently pushed open, and the beautiful and dignified priestess walked in. Charlotte smiled sweetly. She was about to start buttering her up, but Lottie spoke first. Miss Charlotte, the Boulder family wants to see you. They're waiting outside. Chapter 11. Invitation to the Duke Mansion. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. T.N. Boulder, board from now on. Charlotte felt like a busy person, just like a boss who hadn't been to the company for a long time. One by one, everyone lined up to see her. However, while it seemed like she was being welcomed, in reality, not a single person genuinely cared about her. They all had ulterior motives. But, the Board family? The Duke's family? Charlotte's heart stirred. The Board family was the ruling family of the Board Duchy and the object of loyalty for the Castell family. By the way, the two families also had a familial relationship. Firstly, the ancestors of the Castell family were split off from the Board family, considered a branch family of Board. Secondly, the second wife of the former Duke of Board, Lady Catherine, was Charlotte's aunt. If you really calculated the generations, Charlotte was of the same generation as the current Duke. Even though in reality, the two were separated by several decades. In Charlotte's vague memories, one of the few experiences of leaving Castell Manor was mostly to visit her aunt at the Duke's mansion. However, Lady Catherine had passed away many years ago, and Charlotte herself hadn't left the manor for 10 years. Charlotte thought of the nobles who had been driven out by the female knight earlier. If she remembered correctly, they seemed to claim to represent the Duke's mansion. Could it be them? Charlotte pondered. With a whisper to herself about being in demand, she nodded gently and obediently said, Please, let them in. The door was pushed open again, and several nobles in gorgeous attire entered the patient room. As expected, it was the group of people who had been driven out by Captain Kara before. Miss Charlotte, we meet again. It's been so many years, and you've become more beautiful. The leading fat nobleman said with a kindly smile, performing a standard noble etiquette. Then, his expression became solemn, as if he were changing faces in Sichuan opera, becoming mournful and heavy. T.N. Sichuan opera, Chinese opera that is known for its quick face-changing technique. The incident last night, the Duke's mansion already knows about it. Regarding the ordeal of the Castell family, the Duke is deeply saddened and extremely angry. This morning, the Duke has urged the Demon Hunters Bureau to thoroughly investigate this matter, vowing to unearth all the sinister bloodborns of Board and wipe them out in one fell swoop. Please rest assured, no matter what happens, the Board family will always be the strongest backing for the Castell family. The fat nobleman was indignant and his expression looked sincere. Charlotte, on the other hand, shrunk slightly under the blanket, putting on a bewildered and timid expression. She tilted her little head, her big eyes seeming full of question marks. Excuse my rudeness, who are you? The fat nobleman's breath paused, but it was the young noble swordsman behind him who couldn't help but chuckle. Bruno, I told you a long time ago, it's been 10 years already, how could the Castell family's young lady remember you? After speaking, the swordsman walked over the fat nobleman and came to Charlotte's side. He was about to speak, but suddenly remembered something and imitated the fat nobleman's actions, performing a noble etiquette. Charlotte still made a wary little animal appearance, pretending to be a naive and timid little girl. However, she was quite calm in her heart, analyzing the identity of the other party based on their performance. Let's leave aside the fat nobleman for now. His steward's attire was too conspicuous, obviously a steward or servant of the Duke's mansion, probably with a viscount or baron title. What interested Charlotte was the swordsman. Judging by the memories she inherited, the swordsman's movements were quite unorthodox, but it was evident that he was trying his best. This should be someone who had only recently become a noble, or a powerful extraordinary being. Her conversation with Dean Raoul had given Charlotte some understanding of the nobles in this world. In the world of Myria, nobles almost monopolized the extraordinary powers. It was normal for wild extraordinary beings to be recruited by nobles, and some of them could even directly become new nobles with titles. However, looking at the swordsman's obviously high-end and gorgeous attire, especially the lion emblem of the Board family that only main family members could wear on his right chest, Charlotte further adjusted her judgment. This was a newcomer recognized by the Board family, newly gaining main family member status. Nice to meet you for the first time, Miss Charlotte. I'm Leno Board, the noble swordsman said. Cough cough cough, ahem. The fat nobleman next to him coughed desperately, gesturing with his eyes. The swordsman was stunned for a moment, then instantly reacted, scratching his head and saying somewhat embarrassedly. Ah, Leno de Bold. De was a common suffix in the noble names of the Silver Moon Kingdom, usually indicating the family or territory, meaning belonging to or coming from. For example, Charlotte herself, Charlotte de Castel, colloquially meant Charlotte from Castel's domain. In the Crescent Kingdom, the best way to judge noble status was to see if there was a de between the given name and the surname when someone introduced themselves. Obviously, this newcomer to the Board family wasn't used to his noble status yet. This time when he reintroduced himself, he even nervously mispronounced the surname Board. The fat nobleman was almost going crazy. As if wearing a mask of pain, he covered his face instantly, despairingly reminding in a low voice. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. It's Board. The swordsman. The young noble's expression froze for a moment, then his face turned red. His expression changed for a moment, then, as if he had given up, he cursed grumblingly. Damn, nobles are really troublesome. Damn Board. The fat nobleman widened his eyes, almost fainting as he covered his head, his entire body almost collapsing. However, the young swordsman didn't care anymore. All right, Bruno, don't stare at me with your little eyes. No matter how big you stare, they're still small. And don't lecture me anymore. Even if the old man came today, I wouldn't care. I've said it many times, if I can't get used to it, I will not follow it. There are too many rules at home. I'd rather be a mercenary and be free. With that, he looked at Charlotte again and quickly said, Miss Charlotte, let me reintroduce myself. I'm Leno. As you can see, I used to be a free mercenary. I've just returned to the Board family recently and am not familiar with anything. If I've offended you, please forgive me. I came here this time not only to visit but also to deliver an invitation on behalf of the old man. Damn, honestly, I feel crazy delivering a birthday invitation now. After all, something like that happened just yesterday. Now is not the right time at all. But the old man insisted I deliver it, saying it's important for the future of the Castel family, especially after what happened at Castel Manor. Miss Charlotte, I know you're afraid, in pain and very sad right now. But people always have to look forward. Mercenaries have a saying, life is the most damned adventure. Only the most damned determined bastard can shout, screw it, and come back triumphant with a beauty and treasure in hand. You're not just yourself, you represent the Castel family, so please be strong. All right, I'm done speaking, and the invitation is delivered. I won't disturb you anymore. I wish you a speedy recovery. Goodbye. The young swordsman, named Leno, finished quickly, without even a hint of losing his breath, then turned and left. Charlotte, Lottie, and the fat nobleman were all stunned. However, just before leaving, Leno stopped again, turned his head to carefully examine Charlotte, and pondered for a moment. Miss Charlotte, you're very beautiful and cute, truly as the legends say, more beautiful than any girl of any race I've ever seen. You must be destined to be stunning in the future. It's a pleasure to see a beauty from the Castel family. If it were in the past, I could boast to my companions for several years. However, because of this, please be more cautious. Innate beauty and wealth are blessings from the gods, but they are also curses. Especially when there isn't enough strength to match them. They not only bring blessing, but also disaster. Some things, when it's time to give up, must be given up. With that, Leno didn't explain further, but opened the door and left gracefully. The fat nobleman hesitated, apologized to Charlotte with a bow, then turned and ran after Leno. Oh, Lord Leno, wait for me, wait for me. The two came quickly and left quickly. In the blink of an eye, only Charlotte and Lottie remained. Looking at Charlotte lost in thought, Lottie was full of apologies. I'm sorry, Miss Charlotte, I didn't expect him to be so rude. I shouldn't have let him in, did he frighten you? Saying that, the beautiful priestess shook her head again, frowning. A bastard is a bastard, without any noble etiquette. He's really tarnishing the Board Duke's face. The Duke's illegitimate son, huh? Charlotte looked at the Duke's invitation in front of her with a pensive gaze. Chapter 12, Charlotte's Troubles. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Regarding Duke Board's affairs, Charlotte didn't know much. After all, even though she inherited the memories of her original body owner, she hadn't left the estate for 10 years. However, Leno's visit woke Charlotte up to a rather serious issue. That is the current situation of the Castel family, more accurately, her own situation. Regardless of when Countess Castel became a vampire, or what her strength was before. Before last night's sacrifice, the old lady was indeed the main figure and protector of the Castel family all along. Now, this main figure is dead, suddenly dead. The Castel family is left with only an underage female heir. If Charlotte were inheriting a normal earldom, that wouldn't be a problem. But she isn't. Through memory integration, Charlotte knows just how wealthy the family she's inheriting really is. To put it in perspective, the steward in her memories once proudly mentioned, the entire Castel earldom contributes more than 1/6 of the fiscal revenue of the Board Duchy. What does that mean? 2/3 of Board Duchy's fiscal revenue comes from direct taxation of the Duke's territories, and 1/3 from vassal noble contracts. And the Castel family, equivalent to a vassal noble, monopolizes half of the contract tax revenue outside Board Duchy's direct control. In other words, Castel family contributed just as much as all the other vassal nobles in Board Duchy, more than a dozen families combined. And the taxes paid to the lord are only a quarter of the Castel family's income. In reality, the Castel family's visible income probably approaches that of the duchy's territory taxes. Although Board Duchy is relatively remote and impoverished within the kingdom overall, its status is somewhat akin to the central and western provinces of the Republic of China. But even compared to the wealthiest duchy, the Castel earldom would still be considered quite wealthy territory. Using a comparison from China, it's like a second-tier economically developed city in the central and western provinces. So, here's the problem. A vast and wealthy territory, an underage female heir. Will Charlotte's inheritance of the estate go smoothly? Will she successfully inherit the title? And even if she does inherit, will she be able to maintain it? At this moment, various small plot lines about power struggles began to spread in Charlotte's mind. At the same time, whether it was the church's goodwill or the Duke's invitation, they all became much more intriguing in Charlotte's eyes. Charlotte felt a bit of a headache. The hidden dangers of her vampire identity were not yet resolved, and she was likely to be embroiled in the power struggles of the duchy. The game of power is always turbulent and cruel. Just because she's cute and pitiful doesn't mean everything will be fine. This isn't a Mary Sue novel. Acting cute and foolish can indeed gain favor and lower others' guard. But that only works when there's no conflict of interest, or when the conflict isn't significant enough. Not to mention, even without considering wealth, her appearance alone is enough to make people covet her. After all, even after experiencing various beautiful photos online in her previous life, she could still gaze into the mirror and become infatuated, exclaiming that it was worth living this life just to have this face. Some things, when it's time to give up, must be given up. Charlotte remembered Leno's hint before leaving. She understood. The other party was suggesting that in the worst-case scenario, she could consider relinquishing her inheritance rights to the estate to avoid being caught up in the power struggles among nobles. But why should I give up? Charlotte shook her head. She survived the blood sacrifice. Could her current situation really be worse than being crucified last night? Even if she gets involved in struggles and crises, isn't that something for later? Nothing has happened yet, right? Not to mention, will everything be fine if she gives up her inheritance rights? Some things can be prepared for in advance, but it's not wise to give up just because it might rain. Moreover, is she really just a powerless little girl? No, she isn't. Although she's weak now, Charlotte knows that the path to transcendence has already opened up for her. Charlotte thought of the Gospel of Blood in her consciousness. That's her trump card. It's also her opportunity to become stronger. All she needs is time. She needs time to strengthen herself, to consolidate her position in this world. As long as she becomes strong enough, she can hold on to everything that belongs to her. The estate is not just wealth, it's also a backing. She must find a way to inherit it because it will be the base for her survival in the future. She's a vampire. Where else is more suitable than her own estate to hide her identity? Of course, before becoming powerful enough, she also needs some appropriate and clever techniques to deal with the difficulties she might encounter. She will make full use of everything she can use. Although the future is still uncertain, it doesn't mean there's no hope. Charlotte muttered in her heart. Pushing aside these worries, Charlotte refocused her attention on charging the gospel of blood. Nobles have their rules, and the church has its order. She should be relatively safe for the time being. Although it's a bit strange to be a vampire living in a church hospital, in a sense, it's also a form of protection. She can't do much now, so she might as well think about how to fully charge the codex and develop more of its functions. At the same time, she can also take this opportunity to learn more about extraordinary powers through the hospital's priests. Of course, she also needs to study her own body. Not that kind of man-interest study, but a scientific study of a vampire, serious face. Thinking of this, Charlotte raised her head again and looked at Lottie, who was still rudely mocking Leno's rough behavior on the side. In her eyes, this gentle, beautiful, and kind big sister priest has become a reserve charger for the gospel, as well as a survival guide in another world. Charlotte took a deep breath, slightly raised her beautiful face, and began to skillfully act cute and pitiful. She poked her nearly healed wound forcefully, feeling the familiar pain, making a mist of tears welled up in her eyes. Miss Charlotte, are you feeling unwell? Seeing the girl's pitiful yet forced strong expression, Lottie couldn't help but feel her heart clenched, overwhelmed with pity. That pitiful and somewhat sensible appearance instantly triggered her maternal instinct. Sister Lottie. Charlotte raised her head, and her pure and innocent watery blue eyes looked at Lottie. Her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and her voice, slightly muffled, sounded particularly moving. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. My wound. It seems to start hurting again. Sniff. Is it hurting again? Lottie subconsciously held the girl's arm, her voice full of concern. Yeah. Charlotte obediently nodded. She sniffled and wiped her nose, slightly tilting her head, her clear and innocent pupils reflecting Lottie's slender figure. Sister. Can you use divine magic to help treat Charlotte's wound again? After saying that, she gently lowered her head again, weakly saying, If it's inconvenient, forget it. Lottie hesitated a bit. That shy, nervous, and extremely apprehensive pitiful appearance is hard to refuse. She fell silent for a moment, let out a soft sigh, and nodded slightly. All right. Divine treatment should not be received too much in a short period. If you feel tired, let me know immediately, and I will stop. After saying that, Lottie took a deep breath, placed her hands above Charlotte's palm, and closed her eyes. Her expression gradually became solemn and sacred, and her gentle and solemn prayer sounded slowly. O Lord Harold, you are the creator of the new world. You are the Holy One in the court. The gods follow in your footsteps. The believers listen to your teachings. Great and merciful Lord, please heal me, and I will recover. Please redeem me, and I will be saved. Dazzling and radiant golden light radiated from Priest Lottie. Countless flickering photons slowly gathered and danced in her palms, then falling on Charlotte like snowflakes. However, when the warm light fell on the girl, it brought burning pain like a branding iron. But Charlotte was already prepared for this. She endured it. Not only that, she raised her head and made expressions of joy and happiness. Before her eyes, a blood-red color slowly emerged. The familiar text finally unfolded. Gospel of Blood, detected an ongoing divine ritual. Ritual name, Sacred Heal. Caster, Lottie de Brois. Recipient, Charlotte de Castel. Ritual effect. One of the most basic healing divine spells of Lord Harold, capable of effectively treating minor injuries, relieving pain, and dispelling minor toxins. When the recipient is marked as evil existence by the Holy Court, it will cause pain. Interception probability assessment, 100%. Do you want to intercept? The familiar interface, the familiar inquiry. Charlotte also made a skillful response. Intercept. Ritual judgment modification. All in one go. When a warm breeze replaced the burning pain, the progress of the blood calling also changed. 81.1%, 81.2%, 81.3%. Watching the slowly rising progress bar, Charlotte felt relieved. She knew that she could now freely reach the Holy Court. Chapter 13, Charlotte gathering snacks. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. She's here? She's here. She's already here. Where? She's in the main hall, worshipping with Lord Raoul. Let's go, hurry and take a look. The crowd of believers in various costumes surged and gathered in a corridor outside the praying hall of Board Church Hospital. Among them were apprentice priests from the church hospital, residents living nearby, and young nobles who came with their entourage out of curiosity. This strange scene surprised passersby who were unaware of the truth. What's going on? Why are there so many people gathered? Yeah, isn't the church here usually not very crowded? Is there an event at the church hospital today? It's Miss Charlotte. Excited resident said. He pointed to the main hall not far away and continued. She's worshipping in the hall. She's been attending for 3 days in a row. Miss Charlotte? Why does that name sound familiar? Of course it's familiar. She's the daughter of the Castel family. Castel? Is it that Castel? A few days ago, the family was ruined, but only one glance from the illegitimate son of the Duke makes him enchanted by her beauty. That's right, it's her. The crowd's eyes lit up. Let's go, hurry and take a look. Watching the excitement is always a pleasure for ordinary people, especially if it's related to nobles. Like a viral spread, passersby soon became excited and quickly joined the crowd to watch. However, at the center of attention, in the main praying hall of the church hospital, there was a solemn and sacred scene. The ethereal hymns cleansed the hearts of the people, and the holy light illuminated the hall. Priest Raoul wore a white divine robe, with a divine staff in one hand and a holy scripture in the other. He solemnly expounded the doctrine of the Holy Kingdom. The divine light shone on him, making him look like a messenger of the gods. Bright, holy, majestic. However, as a preacher, he was not the focus of the entire scene. Under the pulpit, a beautiful girl in a pure white gown, with her hands rested on her chest clasped together. She knelt on the ground, her eyes closed lightly, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, and her delicate face filled with peace and holiness. Her golden hair shimmered like silk in the divine light, naturally scattered on the ground. The sparkling photons enveloped her, like dancing fairies. Angel, she was an angel that had fallen to earth. This was the only thought in the minds of everyone witnessing this scene. The faithful who listened to the church in the main hall became more devout, and their eyes toward the girl and the priest were full of admiration and enthusiasm. Those who came to watch the legendary beautiful noble girl couldn't help but quiet down. They were afraid of disturbing the praying girl. They were afraid of ruining such a sacred and beautiful scene. They felt ashamed and felt that any disrespect to the girl at this moment was like blasphemy against the gods. Even the free-spirited artists who were attracted to come couldn't help but look at all this excitedly, eager to open their sketchbooks on the spot and depict this sacred scene. Our Lord in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. The old priest solemnly finished the final prayer, gently placing down the holy scripture. He crossed his chest devoutly. Praise the divine. Praise the divine. The believers also traced the holy emblem on their chests, praising in unison. The hymn ceased, and the divine light that enveloped the main hall was also removed by the priests. Today's worship service was over. Priest Raoul nodded slightly to the faithful, then left the church together with the girl. The main hall quieted down again for a moment, and the solemn atmosphere gradually dissipated. Outside the door, the onlookers breathed a sigh of relief. They looked at each other, seeing admiration and shock in each other's eyes. So beautiful. She's really beautiful. No wonder so many people like her. Praise the Lord. Is she the daughter of the gods? No wonder she's from the Castel family. She's also the heir to the title. If anyone could pursue her, they could also obtain the wealth of the Castel family. Don't daydream. Even ordinary nobles probably aren't worthy of the Castel family. But didn't the Castel family suffer a disaster? I heard there's only her left. Pitiful. She's not even an adult yet. Hey, even if her family suffered a disaster, the price of a meal for her is probably your annual salary. Yeah, I heard everything in the Castell family, even the bed and toilet, are made of gold. Hee, little Charlotte, how did you consider my proposal earlier? Becoming a priest doesn't mean giving up the inheritance of the estate, as long as you don't hold an official position in the church. There are also many noble that become church priests. In the corridor of the church hospital, Dean Raoul walked side by side with Charlotte, his old face wearing a kind smile. To be honest, I'm increasingly fond of you. You're really suitable to become a priest, no, perhaps even a saint of the church in the future. Have you noticed, with you here, the number of believers who have come to worship in the church these days has increased a lot, and even the priests are more dedicated. How about it, Lil, Charlotte, are you willing to join the church? Charlotte smiled sweetly. She skillfully drew a cross on her chest and didn't answer directly. Grandpa Raoul, I'll consider it again. Dean Raoul nodded gently, indicating understanding. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Sorry, I was a bit hasty. You must have some other concerns. But what I said was sincere. You have a high affinity with the divine power. It's not a common occurrence to be surrounded by divine light every time one worships. You see, even the power of the gods likes you, blessing you eagerly. Of course, those thing all wanted to purify me, but in the end, I persuaded them to change their minds. Charlotte smiled, her chest slightly raised, like a proud little kitten. Of course, I'm a devout believer of the Lord. I feel very honored and happy to be able to personally attend the worship service presided over by you. She was really happy. A second-tier priest is indeed a second-tier priest. Through today's worship, she harvested more energy through the divine ritual than in the past few days combined. Dean Raoul nodded slightly, also smiling. He had no doubts about the girl's devout faith. Is the wound completely healed? Thanks to you and the other priests, it has healed completely, without leaving a single scar. No, it's because you're a devout believer of the Lord, a favored existence by our Lord. The old priest shook his head gently. Discharge officially tomorrow? Yes. It's a pity. Tomorrow I need to go to the Grand Cathedral to meet the high priest, so I can't personally send you off. No need to trouble yourself. Sister Lottie has already informed my family. The family will send servants to pick me up. But the Castell Manor, oh, right, the Castell family still has some shops in the city, where everything is fine. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy after talking about the Castell family's matters. After a moment, Dean Raoul sighed and gently patted Charlotte's shoulder. Lil, Charlotte. I've heard some not-so-good rumors recently. After your discharge, if you encounter any difficulties that can't be solved, send someone to find me. I still have some faith in the church, and I can also say a few words to the high priest. Charlotte hesitated for a moment. She slowly raised her head and saw the firm and loving gaze of the old priest. A warm feeling rose in her heart, and Charlotte nodded gently. Thank you, Grandpa Raoul. This time, she didn't use her usual deliberately cute tone. The old priest smiled. He smiled very happily. All right, enjoy the peace of the church hospital a little longer. I've helped you intercept quite a few noble visits these days. You seem to dislike dealing with them. But after your discharge, I won't be able to help you anymore. After speaking, Dean Raoul gently rubbed the silky hair on the girl's head and left with a hearty laugh. Watching him leave, Charlotte sighed lightly. Although the old priest had the selfish motive of wanting to recruit her into the church, he was indeed sincerely good to her. This made her feel a little guilty about deceiving him. Of course, this guilt was fleeting and disappeared in an instant. After all, surviving in this otherworldly world was her top priority now. Back in her ward, Charlotte closed the door. Several thick books were placed on the bedside bookshelf, all borrowed from the church these days. She had been in the hospital for 6 days. By the third day, her wound had already healed. During these days of leisure time, apart from finding ways to leech the church, Charlotte spent the rest of her time reading or testing her current physical condition. She secretly tested several things. Although this body was only 15 years old, the energy contained within it could easily knock down 3 strong men. Whether it was speed, strength, or endurance, they were all strong. Ordinary people were no match for her at all, and if it were after nightfall, her overall physical fitness would rise to a whole new level, doubling directly. However, correspondingly, she did have some obvious weaknesses. Bloodborne was indeed a vampire. Through these days of observation and experimentation, she found that she did indeed fear sunlight, just as in the legends. It was fine to stay in the room, and even exposure to candlelight was okay. But if she appeared under direct sunlight, her skin would experience a noticeable burning sensation. Short exposure didn't show much, but if she stayed for a longer period, her skin would gradually redden, blister, and her body temperature would rise sharply. Charlotte didn't dare to test too long. She estimated that if she stayed longer, there was a high probability of a life-threatening situation. Although she wasn't sure if triggering the protective mechanism of the Gospel of Blood would help, it was better not to take risks while in the church. In addition, under direct sunlight, Charlotte would feel extremely tired. Her overall physical fitness would significantly decrease, weakening by about 50%. But apart from this, items like garlic, silverware, or crosses posed no threat to her. The exception is divine magic. The restraining power of the divine magic of the Holy Court was very strong against her. Fortunately, she had the divine ritual counter of the Gospel of Blood to manipulate it, which put them as the least of her worries. It just meant she couldn't bask in the sun anymore, but nothing is absolute. As the vanguard against the blood demon cult, the church hospital's library also had many records about Bloodborne. Some books mentioned that some powerful Bloodborne could ignore the sunlight's exposure, and some Bloodborne with special bloodline talents could freely walk under the sunlight. In other words, if she could continue to improve her strength, Charlotte also had the hope of standing under the sun again one day. Moreover, Charlotte also gained some understanding of the extraordinary power system in the world of Myria. The division of extraordinary powers in this world was not as complex as in many novels she had read in her previous life. On the contrary, it was quite straightforward. In this world, there were 4 tiers of extraordinary powers. From weak to strong, they were the starry sky first tier, the silver moon second tier, the blazing sun third tier, and the legendary fourth tier. Below the starry sky first tier, there was a special stage between ordinary people and extraordinary beings, generally referred to as the apprentice tier, squire tier, novice tier, or zero tier. This refers to those who have mastered extraordinary powers but their power is not enough to completely surpass the limits of ordinary people, or not enough to independently trigger divine magic and miracles. Like Charlotte now. Above the legendary fourth tier was the realm of gods that ordinary people could not touch. The realm of gods is for myth. That's what ordinary people look up to. Mythical gods are all gods, but they can be further divided into demigods and true gods. For example, the sacrifice recipient of the old witch, the Bloodborne Archduke, is a demigod and one of the officially recognized evil gods by the Holy Court. This information was all collected by Charlotte from church books. It was embarrassing. The supreme artifact of the Bloodborne, the Gospel of Blood, was in her hands, but it was so damaged that she had to find so much knowledge in the church. Fortunately, after these days of leeching the church, the charging of the blood summoning had finally been completed. Charlotte planned to try it out after leaving the church and returning to the manor tomorrow. Sitting back on the bed, Charlotte felt a little thirsty. She poured herself a glass of water and planned to read for a while longer. However, after drinking the water, the thirst didn't diminish. Instead, it became stronger. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. It seemed like her bloodthirst was about to trigger. Chapter 14. Please, show some restraint. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. This is the first time Charlotte has felt a craving for blood in the last 6 days. Unlike the previous time she arrived at the church hospital, this craving didn't have a cause. It seemed to appear suddenly. At the same time, this craving didn't start as intense as the first day when she was attracted by the fragrance of Priest Lottie. Initially, Charlotte only felt a slight thirst. Gradually, this feeling of thirst intensified. She became very thirsty, extremely thirsty, like a traveler in the desert who hasn't had a drop of water for a long time. However, no matter how much water Charlotte poured for herself, she couldn't alleviate this thirst. This thirst seemed to be imprinted on her soul. Their fear of light and holy power, their craving for blood, their dependence on sucking blood for survival, their evil, madness, and cruelty. Priest Lottie's words surfaced in Charlotte's mind again. The need for regular blood consumption is a sign of being a bloodborne. The church's books also describe bloodborne as creatures that need to consume blood regularly to survive. During these peaceful days, Charlotte thought that she could satisfy her need for blood just by eating and sleeping normally. She thought that perhaps having the gospel made her immune to the need for blood. But now, it seemed she was wrong. It wasn't that she was immune, but the time hadn't come yet. Hold on, I'll be discharged tomorrow. After leaving the hospital, I'll find a source of blood to satisfy my needs. Charlotte encouraged herself. Bloodborne need to drink blood regularly, but whether it was the church's books or the priests in the hospital, they never said it had to be human blood. Charlotte wasn't that twisted. She had already decided that once she left the church tomorrow, she would quickly send the family's servants to buy some livestock and poultry. Whether it's chickens, ducks, geese, rabbits, deer, fish, or anything else, their blood should solve the problem and also cover her tracks. With that in mind, Charlotte forcefully diverted her attention, trying not to think about bloodsucking. But she underestimated the speed at which this bloodthirsty desire erupted. As time passed, the thirst became stronger and stronger, and Charlotte found it increasingly difficult to divert her gaze. Her mind seemed to be filled with thoughts of when she could finally drink blood. The more she thought about it, the thirstier she became. Her breathing became rapid, her gaze became unfocused, and her panting became heavy. Charlotte felt a faint heat on her cheeks, and her brain gradually became drowsy, as if she were running a fever. She reluctantly sat up on the bed and looked at herself in the mirror on the bedside table, only to be startled by her reflection. In the mercury mirror, the beautiful girl's cheeks were flushed, her gaze unfocused, her long eyelashes trembling slightly, and her eyes seemed watery. That delicate appearance seemed like it was about to shed tears, as if being a maiden in heat. Charlotte. She felt like something deep inside her had collapsed. The self-esteem that hadn't been pierced even when acting silly and cute collapsed at this moment. No, this isn't me, absolutely not me. Charlotte threw away the mirror, turned over, and buried her head in the pillow. She couldn't sleep that night. Good morning, Lil, Charlotte. Huh? What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? The next morning, Priest Lottie, as usual, was performing her duty, but what she saw was a girl wrapped up in a small blanket like a silkworm cocoon. She walked to the bedside with some concern. The irresistible and tempting fragrance immediately filled Charlotte's nostrils, making her shiver involuntarily. So fragrant, she wanted to pounce on her. She wanted to bite into her slender neck and suck her sweet blood. Various crazy thoughts surged like a tide, impacting Charlotte's sanity. She gritted her teeth, resisted the urge to assault, continued to curl up in the blanket, and mumbled, "I'm fine, I'll sleep a little longer." Listening to the suppressed trembling in her voice, Priest Lottie's gaze slightly condensed. She hesitated for a moment, then lifted the girl's blanket and directly uncovered it. Charlotte was suddenly exposed to the light. The two almost made eye contact in an instant. Priest Lottie was slightly stunned while Charlotte inwardly cursed, "Oh no." But just as she thought she was about to expose her identity as a bloodborne, she saw the beautiful priest first slightly stunned, then blushing, and gently averted her gaze. Lottie reached out and covered her with the blanket again, her gentle voice carrying reminders and reprimands. "Little Charlotte, your body has just healed, and you're still quite weak. You need to control your urge a bit. I know you're curious at your age, but you need to pay attention to the frequency and intensity of such behavior." Charlotte. Charlotte knew that her symptoms of blood addiction were misunderstood by Lottie. Her mood was complicated. She didn't know whether to feel fortunate that her identity hadn't been exposed or ashamed for being misunderstood for doing something wrong. At this moment, she should be thankful for her desire for blood. As time passed, Charlotte's craving for blood did not diminish. Moreover, this craving began to affect her thinking. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Everything she saw seemed to be a source of blood. Even the mosquitoes in the room became adorable, and it was difficult for her to think deeply about anything else. As a result, she didn't have to worry about the shame of being misunderstood anymore, because she no longer has the energy. Fortunately, Charlotte's will was still firm, and her consciousness was still clear. Although her whole being was about to be consumed by desire, she still maintained basic rationality. Or maybe she had endured for too long. Her state of being like a maiden in heat finally began to change after nearly a day. As night fell and the Castell family's carriage finally came to pick her up, Charlotte had somehow returned to normal. However, she seemed absent-minded. Charlotte knew that she hadn't overcome it. In fact, she was now like a volcano about to erupt, just forcibly suppressing all desires for the moment. She is calm for now, but once triggered, her blood-sucking instinct would probably erupt completely, and she would no longer be able to suppress it. But Charlotte's absent-minded state was misunderstood by the priests as the sadness and reluctance of a girl leaving. "Lady Lottie, thank you for taking care of Miss Charlotte. This is a token of appreciation from the Castell family. Please accept it." The servant of the Castell family was an old man with a hunchback named Casimodo. He was extremely ugly, with two servants dressed in Castell family uniforms following behind him. The priests at the church hospital all knew this old man. He was the owner of the Castell family's silverware shop in the West District of Board City. Despite being born with a congenital disability, he was rescued and adopted by the previous Count Castell, and he was extremely loyal to the Castell family. He had even saved the life of the old Count in the past. The master-servant relationship between the two was also a good story in Board City. Lottie glanced at the box of gold and silver being offered, motioning for the apprentice priest to accept it, and then sighed lightly, saying, "Healing Charlotte is what the church hospital should do. However, as servants of the Castell family, you have not visited your master for several days. It seems you are not very competent." At the end, the priest's voice carried a hint of reproach. The old servant's hunchback deepened further. He looked guilty and sighed. "You are right. I will make sure to improve in the future, but these days, because of the turmoil in the estate, the whole family has been in chaos, and I couldn't spare any time." "All right, it's getting late. Hurry and take Charlotte away. Remember what I said." Lottie shook her head, interrupting Casimodo's explanation. The old servant bowed deeply, then turned to the silent Charlotte and gave a bow, saying, "Miss, let's go." Charlotte, who was still struggling with the temptation of blood, nodded listlessly. She suppressed the bloodthirsty desire attracted by the enticing fragrance of the many priests. With the help of the old man, she boarded the carriage. "Miss Charlotte, have a safe journey. If you have time, you can come back to visit us again." A priest waved goodbye. Charlotte forced herself to smile weakly. "I don't want to be hospitalized again." Ha ha ha. The many priests were amused by the girl's words. The leaving carriage took Charlotte away. The priests of the church hospital stood at the door of the church, watching the carriage disappear at the end of the road. "Ah, with Miss Charlotte gone, the daily mass will be much less fun." One priest sighed. "Yeah, just seeing her every day would improve my mood a lot." Other priests echoed. Lottie silently watched the direction the carriage had gone, silent for a long time. Then, with a sigh, let's go back. There's still a lot of work to do at the hospital." With that, many priests turned around. However, just as they were about to enter the church hospital, with a stir of dust, another carriage hurriedly passed by, attracting everyone's attention. "Stop." Under the coachman's command, the carriage slowly stopped in front of the church hospital. A hunched old man, wiping the sweat from his forehead, tremblingly jumped down from the position of the coachman. He had an ugly face, was panting, and bowed to the priests. "I'm sorry, my lords, there was some trouble at the shop, and I'm late. I'm Casimodo, here to pick up my master, Miss Charlotte, to go home." Looking at the old man's identical appearance, the priests were suddenly stunned. Chapter 15, Hijacking Under the Moonlight. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte sat in the carriage, her mind feeling heavy and sluggish. The carriage shook violently, and the howling wind made the curtains on both sides rustle. The craving for blood made the girl's thoughts extremely sluggish, but even so, she still felt that something was off. The carriage, was it going a bit too fast? Slow down. Charlotte leaned back in the reclining chair inside the carriage, massaging her buzzing temples, and softly spoke to the old servant in front. However, the old servant did not respond, and the speed of the carriage did not decrease at all. Please, slow down. She struggled to knock on the window frame again, trying to remind the attendants riding on both sides of the carriage. The attendants also ignored her, silently guarding on both sides of the carriage. Charlotte suddenly became a bit more alert. She reluctantly sat up straight, propped up her dizzy head, and pulled open the curtains of the carriage. Outside was a rather dilapidated cobblestone road, with low, crumbling buildings on both sides rapidly moving away. Even though Charlotte didn't recognize the way home, she could tell that this was definitely not the road back to the Castell Manor. The reason was simple. Castell Manor was located in the prosperous section of the noble district of Boulder City. Although the streets there were not particularly clean and tidy, the inherited memories also included spacious and smooth roads. But here, the road was bumpy, the buildings were gloomy and dilapidated, and there were few lights visible on the buildings on either side of the road, like haunted houses in a horror show. Miss, the wind outside is too strong. Please close the curtains quickly. Finally, the attendant outside the carriage spoke. However, the first thing he did was to reach out and close the carriage window. Charlotte's heart sank. She realized that she might have been abducted by someone. These people probably were not servants of the Castell family at all. Realizing this, Charlotte became completely alert. Her first thought was to jump off the carriage and escape. The senses of the Bloodborne were very sharp. She could clearly sense that neither the old servant driving the carriage nor the attendants riding on both sides were extraordinary individuals. They didn't even have the enticing aroma of church priests on them. Their scent was similar to the commoners in the ordinary hospital wards, like dry black bread. Tasteless to eat, but a pity to waste. These people were most likely just ordinary people who had undergone some training. Although the carriage was fast now, Charlotte was not an ordinary little girl. The special physique of the Bloodborne gave her the confidence to jump off the fast-moving carriage unharmed and then escape quickly. Even though she was not in a good condition now, constantly on the verge of a blood frenzy. However, just as Charlotte was about to act, a cold light reflected in front of the attendant. Charlotte saw clearly that it was a loaded crossbow in front of the attendant. Damn it, how could these people have crossbows? Charlotte cursed inwardly and instantly dispelled the idea of jumping off the carriage. She barely knew a bit about history in her past life and had some understanding of this kind of lethal weapon from the era of cold weapons. In the medieval era of Earth, whether it was in the East or the West, such things were prohibited from being used outside the battlefield. Even though she had crossed into this world with extraordinary powers, she didn't think that such a thing, which could directly pierce through a knight's armor at close range, would be allowed to be brought into the city. Not only that, Charlotte had been searching for books about extraordinary powers in the church these days. Among them, there was a book comparing the combat power of extraordinary individuals and ordinary people, which mentioned several weapons that ordinary people could use that might pose a life threat to extraordinary individuals. Among them was the crossbow. It was clearly stated in the book that ordinary individuals who had not stepped into the ranks of the extraordinary could not contend with a crossbow. And even if they had stepped into the ranks, before reaching the second tier of Silver Moon, specially trained ordinary people, under the premise of being fully prepared, also had a certain chance of killing a first-tier extraordinary like Charlotte with a crossbow. It was obvious that the crossbow in the hands of these people was to guard against possible extraordinaries. The need to use a crossbow to guard against extraordinaries indicated that these people probably did not have an extraordinary person as an accomplice, but since they could obtain crossbows, the forces behind them were definitely not small. Charlotte quickly made this judgment. However, although she had just entered the realm of the extraordinary, she had not yet stepped into the first tier. With the physique of the Bloodborne, if these people were unarmed, perhaps she would not be afraid at all. But now was different. They had weapons, sharp ones to boot. If she acted rashly, if these people aimed their crossbows at her, she might be in danger. Not only that, even if she successfully escaped, if she exposed her identity as a member of the Bloodborne, she would also invite endless trouble. At least, the identity as Charlotte de Castell would definitely be doomed. Her mind was so heavy and sluggish that it was difficult for Charlotte to focus her thoughts. But even so, she made a decision. Don't act rashly for now. These people are obviously still alert after successfully kidnapping their target. She had to wait until they relaxed before she could consider quietly escaping or directly confronting them. These people didn't know she was an extraordinary, just treating her as a powerless little girl. Then, their disdain for her was her chance. Thinking like this, Charlotte calmed down. Outside the window, the moonlight gradually deepened. With the night falling, Charlotte clearly felt that her body's functions were steadily improving at a considerable speed. Night was the Bloodborne's playground. Under the moonlight, Charlotte's strength would only become stronger than during the day. However, at the same time, perhaps due to the side effects brought about by the enhancement of nighttime powers, as Charlotte's Bloodborne powers increased, her bloodthirsty desire became increasingly difficult to suppress. Her rationality gradually began to tilt toward the edge of losing control, to the point where the scent emanating from the attendants and the old servant, from being as bland as black bread, gradually became as delicious and enticing as creamy mushroom soup. This was a development that Charlotte could not have anticipated. She felt that she was about to lose control to her impulse. The carriage raced in the moonlight. After an unknown amount of time, it finally stopped in a desolate and uninhabited courtyard. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Stop. The old servant driving the carriage pulled the reins, and the panting horses let out a neigh, stopping slowly. The horses nervously snorted, their legs trembling and excrement constantly flowing down. The old servant glanced strangely at the trembling horses, pinched his nose, and cursed softly. Damn it, these useless horses we were given are all useless trash. They've only run for so long and can't go on anymore. His voice was full of vigor, completely different from the frailty he had just shown in front of the hospital. Hey, you two, go outside and keep an eye out. Don't let anyone follow us for real. He ordered the two attendants. The two attendants looked at each other, glanced at the carriage with suspicion, then sneered doubtfully. Hatchet, are you trying to sneak off and play with the cargo while we're not around? Damn it, this is the young lady of the Castell family. The master specifically ordered the goods to be checked by him personally and made it clear that we couldn't touch them. If you want to die, go ahead and try. The old servant glared, annoyed. HMPH. The two attendants snorted lightly, unwillingly dismounted and went to the entrance of the courtyard. Really blind bastards, don't even see what kind of junk you are, and you still desire to eat swan meat like a toad. The old servant cursed a few more times, spat heavily on the ground, took out a piece of hard black bread from his pocket, took a few hard bites, chewed, took a few sips from the water bottle he carried with him, and then jumped down from the carriage. When he came to the front of the carriage, he had put on a smiling face. Miss Charlotte, we're here. The old servant with his hoarse voice lightly knocked on the carriage. Silence. The horses neighed softly, and the night wind rustling the messy bushes sounded. There was no response from inside the carriage. Miss Charlotte? The old servant repeated, still no answer. The old servant's face changed slightly. He quickly opened the curtain, and his sharp eyes shot into the carriage. But when he saw the girl cowering in the corner of the carriage, he instantly breathed a sigh of relief. He smiled slightly, but his ugly face looked even more hideous. Miss Charlotte, why aren't you speaking? You really scared this old man. He, we've arrived, you should get off. The girl in the carriage did not move. The old servant frowned slightly, his face gradually darkening. He snorted, roughly opened the side door of the carriage, preparing to forcibly pull the girl out. However, when he opened the door and his hand covered with calluses and body hair was about to touch the girl, he suddenly stopped. The cold moonlight shone through the window, pouring onto the girl, coating her beautiful golden hair with a layer of silver brilliance. The girl slowly raised her head. Her face was as delicate as a doll's, but lacking any expression. A pair of blood-like eyes as deep as the sea looked at the old servant who opened the carriage. Cold, indifferent, but seemed to be carrying the madness and brutality. The corners of her mouth lifted slightly, outlining a beautiful and charming curve, with a pair of sharp fangs faintly showing. The old servant's entire body hair suddenly stands to its limit. Chapter 16. She is a monster. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. What a nuisance. Did you see how he acted just now? Yes. Isn't it just because he got lucky and was chosen by the magician to be cast with a disguise spell? He really thinks he's a boss now. Yup. What's wrong with playing in advance? She's just a little girl without awakened bloodline power. A little threat is enough to stop her blabbering. Yeah. Outside the courtyard, two servants stood side by side watering the grass. One grumbled while the other kept agreeing. This area was quite desolate, surrounded by abandoned houses, occasionally some passing homeless people casting curious glances at the two. What are you looking at? Look again and I'll shoot your eyeballs to pieces. The grumbling servant glared and shouted. He flashed the crossbow at his waist, scaring the homeless man away instantly. What bad luck. Once I'm done with this job and become a knight, I'll never come to this ghostly place again. The servant snorted coldly, holstered his crossbow, and pulled up his pants. After relaxing, the two glanced around roughly before turning back towards the courtyard. This area was quite remote and rarely visited on ordinary days. They had already arranged for people to distract the Castell family, and they had been running around in circles, not worried at all about someone discovering the truth and chasing after them in a short while. Next, they had plenty of time to hand over the goods. Just thinking about the reward they would soon receive filled the two with anticipation. Let's hurry up. Who knows if that guy distracted us really for caution or if he wants to play sneakily in advance. The Castell family's young lady is a temptation even a god would envy. Yes. Damn, do you think he wouldn't really eat her alone, wouldn't he? Yes. You make sense. Let's go quickly. The two servants immediately quickened their pace. However, just as they took a few steps, a piercing scream came from the direction of the courtyard, exceptionally clear in the deep night. They froze in their tracks. Just now, who was that? It sounded like Hatchet. They glanced at each other, their expression slightly changed, then immediately picked up their crossbows, becoming even more vigilant. There might be trouble, let's be careful. The two exchanged a glance, nodded silently, then tightened their grip on their crossbows and cautiously walked toward the direction of the courtyard. The night was deep, and the mercury-like moonlight spilled onto the ground, adding a hint of eerie mystery to the dilapidated courtyard. After that scream, there was no sound coming from the courtyard anymore. Only the rustling of leaves blown by the night wind, the chirping of insects in the grass, and occasionally the hoarse meowing of a cat could be heard. Hatchet. The two servants stood at the courtyard gate, calling out from afar. However, there was no response. A gust of night wind blew, cold and eerie, carrying a strong smell of blood, making the two feel a chill. They looked at each other, seeing a hint of seriousness in each other's eyes. Swallowing hard, they both subconsciously tightened their grip on the crossbows in their hands, as if only such powerful weapons could give them some sense of security. They cautiously approached. The courtyard was eerily silent. The further they went, the stronger the smell of blood became. And when they saw the carriage parked in front of the house, their pupils suddenly contracted. Blood. There was blood everywhere. The carriage had been destroyed, the draft horses were nowhere to be seen, and the dilapidated carriage looked as if it had been drenched in a rain of blood, with blood everywhere within sight. In a puddle of blood not far from the carriage, lay Hatchet dressed in servant clothes. His appearance was no longer that of an ugly old servant but that of a rough middle-aged man. But at this moment, his eyes bulged out, his tongue sticking out, his expression full of terror. That expression seemed to have seen something extremely horrifying. There were traces of tearing all over his body, his limbs twisted at incredible angles, and his chest and abdomen were directly ripped open. The strong smell of blood rushed over, accompanied by a suffocating stench. The two servants almost instantly changed their complexion. Lupe, look over there. One of the servants tugged at the sleeve of the other, pointing tremblingly at the ground. The other followed his gaze, only to see a grim bloodstain on the ground starting from the front of the carriage, extending all the way to the woods in the distance. There were rustling sounds in the woods as if something was moving. Looking at the deep and dark forest, the two swallowed hard. Monster, there must be a monster here. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. For the love of the gods, I knew it. The church has kept this district forbidden for so many years, there must be a reason. Lupe, maybe we should give up the bounty, and just leave. The servant who had been agreeing all along was clearly panicked, making the sign of the cross frantically across his chest. But the other servant's expression changed drastically. After a moment of hesitation, he looked at the empty carriage and clenched his teeth, cursing under his breath. Fool, don't you want the awakening seed? Not to mention if the goods are gone, if we leave now, we'll surely die in the end. Go and see what's exactly going on. Don't be afraid, unlike Hatchet, we have crossbows. The other servant hesitated, but seeing the gloomy yet determined expression on his companion's face, he finally gritted his teeth and followed. The two held their crossbows and walked towards the woods. Along the way, they could sporadically see some remains of the carriage horses. The sounds from the forest gradually became clearer. It seemed that some wild beast was tearing at something. Their hearts pounded almost out of their chests, sweat soaking their backs, and the hands holding the crossbows felt numb. Approaching the forest cautiously, the sounds from within became even clearer. The two held their breath, tremblingly lifting a branch, finally seeing the scene in the woods. They saw the missing carriage horse lying in the forest. The carriage horse was already dead. A petite figure was crouched beside it, seemingly sucking on something. The moonlight poured through the branches, illuminating the petite figure clearly. The blood-stained white dress, the blood-stained golden hair, and under the moonlight, the face that looked like a doll. It was none other than the girl they had abducted. But at this moment, the girl's beautiful face was also stained with blood, adding a hint of cruelty and strangeness. Oh, God, Lupe, it's the girl we brought here. The timid servant couldn't help but whisper. Disturbed by the whisper, the petite figure stopped moving instantly. She slowly turned her head, and what the servant saw were her familiar, captivating features. But at this moment, her sky-blue eyes had turned completely blood-red, with craziness filling her crimson pupils. She looked at the two men, giving a faint smile, her two sharp teeth constantly dripping with fresh blood. Eerie, sinister, yet beautiful. The two servants suddenly shivered coldly. In a panic, the timid servant directly pulled the trigger, and the bolt shot out, piercing through the girl's chest, bursting into a spray of blood. The girl trembled slightly, slowly lowering her head to look at the bolt embedded in her body. Damn it, what are you doing, Antonio? The other servant, watching the girl hit by the arrow, widened his eyes, his expression even more terrified. However, the girl did not react. She seemed completely unaware, tilting her head slightly, her crazy and dazed gaze falling on the embedded arrow, as if slowly pondering what had just happened. Then, she slowly raised her hand, gripping the half-arrow protruding from her body, and pulled it out directly. In the horrified gaze of the two servants, blood splattered, and the gruesome wound on the girl's chest slowly began to heal. Thud. The servant who had pulled the trigger trembled, and the crossbow in his hand fell directly to the ground. Monster. She's a monster. He widened his eyes, his voice trembling. She's a bloodborne. Run. Seemingly realizing something, the other servant's expression changed dramatically. He didn't hesitate at all to turn around and start running. However, just as he turned around, the girl who had been kneeling in the woods suddenly appeared in front of him. Quiet, without any sound. Her beautiful yet eerie face was less than 30 centimeters away from his. He could even see the delicate pores on the girl's face and smell the sweet yet incredibly bloody scent emanating from her body. The girl stood in front of him, playing with a beating heart in her hand. She leaned slightly forward, her warm and fragrant breath sprayed onto the servant's face. Where are you going? The servant's body hair stood up. He was about to raise his crossbow to counterattack, but he felt a dull pain in his chest. His whole body went weak, and he slowly fell down. As his consciousness faded, he was left with only one thought. Oh, that heart was mine. Thud. The remaining servant instantly fell to the ground, watching the girl, drenched in blood under the moonlight. His gaze was dull, trembling in fear, clearly terrified by what had just happened. Her crimson eyes moved slowly, the insane gaze falling on him. The servant was terrified, instantly breaking down, and excreting urine and feces. D. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. I surrender. I surrender. Chapter 17. How should I call you? Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Charlotte discovered two characteristics of the bloodborne. Firstly, if one goes without blood for a long time after craving blood, they will eventually lose control and go berserk, doing unpredictable things. Secondly, if one drinks fresh blood while in a frenzy and sustains injuries, even if the blood comes from animals, as long as the injuries are not fatal, they seem to heal rapidly. As for the cost, it is the deprivation of the feeling of fullness and satisfaction brought by drinking blood, replaced by hunger once again. At the same time, after the frenzy ends, she also becomes extremely weak. The moonlight tonight is beautiful. However, Charlotte had no interest in admiring the moon. Looking at the bloody scene around her and the trembling attendants, only shock remained in her heart. What has she just done? In fact, Charlotte's memories from before were very clear. It was truly a terrifying experience. On one hand, her consciousness was very chaotic. On the other hand, she seemed very clear-headed. She vividly remembered the moment when the old servant opened the carriage door, and the restraint in her mind finally snapped. She vividly remembered how she erupted and brutally killed the other person. She vividly remembered how she dragged the pack horse into the woods to drink its blood, enjoying the sweet taste as if it were rain after drought. She also vividly remembered how she tore off the crossbow bolts from her body, how she scooped out the escaping attendant's heart with one move. The moist heat of the flesh, the slippery texture of the heart, the pulsation of the blood vessels. She remembered all the sensations clearly. Cruel, brutal, bloody. If it were now, even if she decided to kill those two people, she would never use such bloody methods. But at the time of those memories, it was as if she were controlled by some kind of murderous instinct, almost like a wild beast, ruthlessly destroying anything that posed a threat to her. Not only that, she felt very pleased at the time. It wasn't until the last attendant begged for mercy with tears streaming down his face that she finally came to her senses, shuddering directly, and threw the heart in her hand away. That was Charlotte's first time killing someone. No nausea, no disgust, no fear. She didn't know if becoming a member of the Bloodborne had somewhat affected her thinking, making her heart become colder and harder. The brutal self just now made her feel very unfamiliar. Charlotte knew that she had definitely gone berserk at that time. The only thing that made her feel somewhat fortunate was that she managed to maintain a bit of rationality during the frenzy and didn't drink the blood of the corpses. Even though their blood smelled much better than the foul-smelling animal blood. This could be considered Charlotte's bottom line. She always felt that if she really drank the blood of corpses, she would completely lose her humanity and gradually sink further into the path of depravity, becoming a true ghoul. It was obvious that she still knew too little about the power of the Bloodborne. Charlotte closed her eyes lightly, her long eyelashes trembling slightly. After a long time, she opened them again. At this moment, she made a decision. She must completely control the power of the Bloodborne, and never allow such out-of-control frenzy to happen again. Just now, she was very powerful, extremely powerful, definitely reaching the level of an extraordinary. But uncontrollable power was meaningless. This time, her enemies were in front of her. But next time, what if it's her companions? Or what if it's an enemy she can't defeat? The sobbing cries were extremely harsh in the deep night, interrupting the girl's thoughts. Charlotte shifted her gaze and looked at the last attendant who was completely terrified. She didn't continue to kill this person just now. It wasn't because she came to her senses, but because her frenzy had ended. She felt like an amateur athlete who had just finished a marathon, sore and exhausted all over, weak, feeling like she could faint at any moment. Honestly, Charlotte was even a bit nervous now, because if she really had to fight, she might not be able to beat the other person in her current state. Fortunately, this attendant had been scared out of his wits and Charlotte's current weak state was completely unknown to him. This was also good. Charlotte still had some questions she needed to ask. She still kept the appearance of going berserk just now, with a sinister smile on her lips, yet her voice sounded indifferent and lacked any emotion. Tell me, who are you people? If her crimson eyes hadn't reverted to the sky blue color like before, Charlotte would have looked exactly like the killing machine she had just been. Of course, the terrified attendant had already stopped noticing these details. Mercenaries, we are mercenaries. We are free mercenaries from board. He sobbed as he spoke. Free mercenaries. Charlotte's heart moved slightly. After meeting Duke's son, Leno, that day, she had specifically consulted Priest Lottie about mercenaries, knowing that in this world, unaffiliated mercenaries were equivalent to adventurers and bounty hunters in the fantasy novels of her previous life. The difference was that the vast majority of unaffiliated mercenaries were ordinary people struggling to make a living, rather than extraordinaries. Of course, when saying they were ordinary people, it was in the sense of strength compared to extraordinary. In fact, most mercenaries were desperados who had nothing to lose. As long as the bounty was attractive enough, they were willing to do anything. Who sent you? What was your mission? Charlotte asked again. I don't know who our employer is. We just took the job from the Rose Society's task board, which asked us to kidnap a young lady of the Castell family and deliver her to the person who came to pick her up. The attendant said shakily. The Rose Society? Charlotte raised her voice slightly. The Rose Society is the largest underground gang in board, often acting as an intermediary between mercenaries and employers, taking a cut. Underground gang. Charlotte remembered the name of the Rose Society. Charlotte looked at the old servant called Hatchet lying on the ground. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Who gave him the appearance? It was our employer. Huh? Didn't you just say, you don't know who the employer is? Charlotte's voice suddenly became cold. The attendant was on the verge of collapse. I really don't know. He covered his face and deliberately changed his voice. All we know is that he is a mage. Oh, right, it was he who helped us prepare the carriage, and he also helped us prepare the crossbows and costumes. Listening to the man's words, Charlotte pondered. Whether it was disguising mercenaries as servants of the Castell family, forging Castell family uniforms, or knowing the schedule of her return to the estate, it all showed that the other party knew a lot about the Castell family. Not only that, the fact that the other party could obtain crossbows, a banned item, meant that the other party either had a background in the military or had dealings with military personnel. Only the direct vassal nobles of the Crescent Kingdom and the trusted confidants of the direct vassal nobles could get involved. In other words, it was the direct vassal of Duke Board in the Crescent Kingdom. But another problem came up. Since they wanted to kidnap her, with so many unaffiliated mercenaries, why did the employer choose such an unprofessional group? And what was the significance of kidnapping her? At this moment, Charlotte smelled the scent of conspiracy. Where's your rendezvous point? Outside the city. Our first stop was here. We had to change to a new carriage hidden in this courtyard in advance, then leave Board City through the west gate. The attendant said tremblingly. The rendezvous point is not here. Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief. Her current state was not good. If the other party's rendezvous point was this courtyard, she would have to consider fleeing immediately. Tell me the specific location of your rendezvous, then get lost. Charlotte said indifferently. The attendant was overjoyed. He hesitated slightly before he took out a piece of parchment from his pocket, offering it with both hands. Ma'am, it's the location marked on the map. Charlotte took the map and looked it over. Ma'am, can I go now? The attendant asked cautiously. Charlotte glanced at him. Get lost. The attendant was like he had received amnesty. Thank you, ma'am. Antonio will never speak of tonight's events. Antonio swears on God. With that, he stood up tremblingly, staggering towards the courtyard, his posture very embarrassed, obviously still very weak. However, just as he was about to leave the courtyard gate, he suddenly stopped, hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and turned in another direction. There, were the nearest Holy Court Church and Demon Hunter base. The attendant took a step forward, about to run out of the courtyard, but the next moment, he suddenly felt a pain in his chest. He slowly lowered his head, only to see half of a crossbow bolt protruding from his chest. He widened his eyes, opened his mouth slightly, and then slowly collapsed. Behind him, Charlotte, with an expressionless face, slowly put down the crossbow in her hand. She had no intention of letting him go. From the moment he participated in the kidnapping and recognized her bloodborne identity, she had already sentenced him to death. Letting him run first was only because she, in her weakened state, didn't have the confidence to defeat him. Although she looked cute, she was not a saint. The last kidnapper who knew her secret died, and Charlotte also put away the crossbow in her hand. This crossbow was really good. It was a pocket-sized type, but it had great power, and it didn't require too much effort to use. She was already planning to take it back and use it as a self-defense weapon in the future. Well, it could be hidden in her skirt. Charlotte quickly had an idea. However, just as Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded behind her. Would a great being like yourself use a mundane weapon that even secular knights look down upon to deal with ants like ordinary people? Who? Charlotte was startled. She turned around and saw, under the moonlight, a fat black cat slowly walking out of the shadow. Hey, talking black cat? Charlotte's heart was instantly on guard. As a member of the blood race, she couldn't even sense the presence of this black cat just now. The black cat's face had a human-like solemnity. Under Charlotte's vigilant gaze, it elegantly made a bow with its front paws and then spoke hoarsely. Meow, nice to meet you. I am nice, an elegant noble among cats, and also a devout follower of the god of contract. Saying that, it raised its head, and the fat cat's face showed a meaningful smile. You tell me, should I call you Miss Charlotte or Your Majesty the Bloodborne Royalty? Chapter 18, Cat Among Peers. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Nice. Charlotte's gaze shifted slightly. This name wasn't unfamiliar to her. She had heard this name when she lay in her hospital bed on her first day at the church hospital, eavesdropping on the conversation outside her room. At that time, the gentleman, who was talking with the young demon hunter standing guard at the door was called Nice. However, at that time, Charlotte had only thought that Nice was a powerful demon hunter with a peculiar speech habit. But now, it seemed that the other party was not just a peculiar speaker but actually just a cat. The other party was an intelligent supernatural creature. And for some reason, Charlotte also felt a bit familiar with it, as if she had seen it somewhere before. The black cat sat on the ground, its amber vertical pupils reflecting the moonlight, like two lanterns in the night, gazing gently at Charlotte. Charlotte's heart sank slightly. The Holy Court always considered the Bloodborne as one of the evil entities that must be eradicated. The demon hunters were the law enforcement agency under the Holy Court specially dealing with evil beings. Although the black cat claimed to be a follower of the god of contract, after a period of intensive study during her hospitalization, Charlotte also gained some understanding of many gods in this world. The god of contract was an ancient god who was also a member of the Holy Court and one of the many subordinates of the god King Harold. Obviously, in some sense, the black cat was also a supernatural being subordinate to the Holy Court. If you were to make an analogy, it would be like a civil servant in the administrative units. The appearance of the black cat, which had a close relationship with the demon hunters, was definitely not as simple as wanting to chat with Charlotte and make friends. Especially the strong sarcasm hidden in the other party's words indicated that the other party was definitely not well intentioned. At a certain moment, Charlotte even suspected that this kidnapping might have been orchestrated by the other party. At this moment, she became alert. Charlotte's current condition was really bad, not to mention that the other party was likely a highly ranked supernatural being. Even if it was just a talking black cat, she felt that she didn't have the energy to deal with it after her outburst. Even the bolt she had just shot out was something from the first servant she had killed. She didn't have the strength or time to reload her crossbow now. However, the mysterious black cat neither attacked nor directly acted after meeting her, which made Charlotte slightly calmer. The other party seemed uncertain about her strength. It appeared voluntarily, indicating that it didn't consider me a threat. But it didn't attack directly, indicating that it still had some fear of me. And the title it just used for me, royalty? Could it be, it mistook me for a bloodborne big shot? Charlotte's thoughts were unusually quick, and she soon made further judgments. Honestly, royalty was the first time she had heard such a title, and the tone of the other party became solemn when it mentioned this title. This made Charlotte a bit curious. What did the other party take her for? A perverted old monster who possessed underage girls? Thinking of this, Charlotte's mind became more active, although she didn't know what misunderstanding this black cat, who claimed to be a follower of the contract god, had about her. But since the other party had some fear, she might as well play along with the other party's fear and misunderstanding. Put on a show, huh? Coincidentally, she was very familiar with this. With her thoughts sorted out, Charlotte suddenly felt more confident. She started with a light laugh, naturally sitting down on the wreckage of the carriage stained with blood, one fair and slender leg elegantly crossed over the other. Her indifferent gaze didn't even look at the solemn black cat, but rather inspected the hand crossbow in her hand with interest, seemingly not even caring about the other party. The cold and aloof voice contrasted strongly with her sweet and charming appearance, carrying a profound sense of maturity that didn't match her age. Though mortals are lowly ants, they are the ones who rule the world. With their own tools, even weak mortals can slay powerful and arrogant dragons. As she spoke, Charlotte chuckled softly. She casually threw the hand crossbow onto the ground and leaned back slightly, one hand horizontally supporting her chest, the other hand resting on top, gracefully propping up her smooth chin. Her deep and wise eyes looked down at the black cat, whose expression had become increasingly solemn. She hinted meaningfully. Weakness and ignorance have never been the cause of destruction. Arrogance is. Her speech was slow but powerful. Although cold, it was extremely oppressive. The terrifying scene of sprayed blood and the beautiful girl sitting among them as if nothing had happened. Combined with her majestic and profound gaze that didn't match her appearance, it created an unprecedented sense of dissonance and shock. Quite intimidating. The chubby face of the black cat almost instantly became solemn. After meeting the cold blue eyes of the girl, it swallowed a mouthful of saliva, casually shifted its gaze away, and whistled nonchalantly, feeling a bit guilty. Charlotte. Darn it. So, this fat cat is just a dirty old man. Chapter 19, Nice's Ambition. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Ahem, sorry, I lost my composure. It seems you haven't yet adjusted to your new body. The black cat Nice cleared its throat, attempting to cover up the recent embarrassment. But soon, its expression returned to normal, pretending as if nothing had happened. Clearly, the thickness of this cat's skin matched its size perfectly. It lifted its head again, looking directly at Charlotte once more. Its chubby cat face revealed a human-like smile, and its amber eyes were full of curiosity. Speaking of which, I'm really curious. As far as I know, among the current 5 archdukes of the Bloodborne, none of them should bear the symbol of thorns and roses. Could it be that you are one of the ancient beings from the primordial era? Your Excellency, can you satisfy Nice's curiosity and tell me your title? Thorns and roses? Ancient beings? Symbol? Title? Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Looking at the black cat with piercing eyes, she suddenly had a strange thought. Your Excellency of the Bloodborne, a great being. Hiss. Could this guy be mistaking her, a transmigrated person, for a resurrected evil god? This thought arose, and the more Charlotte thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Her mind raced, and she immediately decided to go along with the conversation. However, just as Charlotte was about to continue with the conversation, she realized that something didn't seem right. Wait a minute, if the black cat considered her a resurrected evil god, why would it ask her so many questions? Charlotte had also studied religious knowledge in this world. She had seen topics related to evil gods in the books hidden in the church hospital. The girl clearly remembered that an author in one of the books repeatedly warned readers in a stern tone. Once encountering a resurrected evil god, do not communicate with it. Instead, promptly seal it and exile it to another dimension before it becomes powerful. So here's the question. Why would the black cat Nice, who considered her an evil god, actively engage in conversation with her? And, for such a long conversation? Oh no, it was probably stalling for time. Charlotte almost instantly made this judgment. At that moment, the familiar crimson color suddenly filled her vision again. Ancient characters also slowly appeared. Open black lens bracket, Gospel of Blood, detects an ongoing divine ritual, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket ritual name, Prison of Order close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket practitioner, Nice de Robel close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket recipient, Charlotte de Castel close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket ritual effect. The Prison of Order of the Contract God Mithra. The practitioner can set a target, forming a sealed space centered on the target to temporarily imprison it. This ritual requires a long preparation time, and the practitioner cannot move during the preparation and casting process. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket interception probability judgment. 100% close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket intercept. Close black lens bracket. Divine ritual. It's a divine ritual. This cat has been secretly preparing a divine ritual. It's a priest. Charlotte's expression changed slightly. She subconsciously prepared to intercept this divine ritual but suddenly hesitated. This was a sealing type divine ritual. If she chose to intercept it, at most, she would only be able to remove the seal or transfer it to the black cat. However, removing the seal did not mean she would become safe. Transferring it to the black cat, the other party might still find a way to escape. At that time, she would still have to continue the confrontation with the black cat. By then, the black cat would know that she could modify the divine ritual and her advantage would be lost. Charlotte's condition was very poor, extremely poor, and she was not suitable for combat at the moment. She also didn't know what rank the black cat's strength was. If she really fought, she wouldn't be a match and she would be the one in danger instead. Without knowing what effect the blood summoning would have, her chance only existed in intercepting and modifying the divine ritual. And that shouldn't be now. All this thinking existed in the blink of an eye, and Charlotte quickly made a decision. She gave up resistance. A silver light burst forth instantly, and a square cage of light instantly enveloped Charlotte. Charlotte reached out to probe, feeling like she had touched an invisible wall, unable to move it at all. Don't bother. This is the contract God seal designed specifically to exile beings like you, called the Prison of Order. With your recently awakened power, I think you can't break free from it. Looking at Charlotte's slightly condensed gaze, the black cat grinned, with a hint of satisfaction. Successfully sealing Charlotte seemed to excite it quite a bit, and its attitude became less respectful, or its true colors were revealed. It looked at the girl with disdainful eyes, sneering. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Raoul is really foolish, not even sensing the truth from the sacred fire. He actually asking this cat master to protect an evil god. Meow. Fortunately, this cat master kept a close eye. You excellency the evil god, are you surprised? You're about to be sealed shortly after your resurrection, and the one that is going to exile you is a talking black cat. Weakness and ignorance are never the main cause of destruction, arrogance is. You, are just too arrogant. Nice. The black cat looked excited, using a provocative tone in its voice. Its chubby cat face was full of mockery, giving off a smug feeling, which made Charlotte want to slap it. Charlotte fell into silence. It wasn't because she was flustered. In fact, she was quite calm now. Sealing and exile. Charlotte glanced strangely at the triumphant black cat. After a moment of silence, she lowered her head, trying to hide her emotions. And when she raised her head again, she had once again turned into the weak, pitiful, and helpless little girl from the hospital of the church. She shrank slightly, her delicate little face wrinkling, her deep blue eyes full of grievances, with tears shimmering, looking like a wounded little girl. Woo. Kitty, are you really going to exile me with a divine ritual? Her voice sounds crisp, giving a weak, sad, and helpless feeling. That pitiful look was enough to arouse anyone's pity. Of course, that's only if they didn't know her true self. If they did, the feeling would be a bit weird. The black cat was instantly stunned. It couldn't help but shiver, and its fur stood up like getting an electric shock. Its gaze toward Charlotte was full of strangeness. Hiss. You're really a terrifying existence, in every sense of the word. If I didn't know your true face, I might really have been deceived by you. Charlotte certainly knew she couldn't deceive the other party. She wasn't trying to deceive the other party. She just wanted to use this chilling way to raise the other party's vigilance, indirectly reminding and urging the other party to cast the exile divine ritual quickly to avoid unexpected changes after this. Then she would directly modify the target at the moment the divine ritual was cast, and in turn, exile the other party. Once the practitioner was exiled, the Prison of Order would also dissipate on its own. Then she would be free. As for when the other party would return after being exiled, that would be an unknown. For a cat to return from a dimension beyond who knows how many dimensional layers back to the Miria world, the difficulty was no less than asking a grasshopper to complete the long march of 25,000 li. Presumably, it wouldn't be easy, right? But at least the other party would still be alive. After all, she wasn't a devil. Thinking like this, Charlotte made up her mind. However, after carefully examining her for a while, Nice the black cat fell into deep thought. It seemed to remember something, its gaze slightly brightened, and it suddenly laughed. Actually, what you said makes sense. It's too much of a waste to exile you when you have that wonderful body. Meow, cat master has changed his mind. Why exiling an evil god? It's more exciting to make this beautiful and cute body my servant, and then let her serve me every day, giving me a knee pillow, massaging me, feeding me fruits, feeding me small fish. Isn't that more exciting? The black cat burst into a series of lewd uncle-like laughs, then its expression became serious, and it shouted. Contract, servant's final oath. With that, the brilliance of the divine ritual suddenly bloomed on it. At the same time, new information appeared in Charlotte's vision. Open black lens bracket, Gospel of Blood, detects an ongoing divine ritual, close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket ritual name, servant's final oath close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket practitioner, Nice de Robel close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket recipient, Charlotte de Castel close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket ritual effect. The servant's final oath of the contract God Mithra, one of the most strict and overbearing servant contracts in the world. The practitioner will sign an eternal and irrevocable master-servant contract with the recipient. The servant will unconditionally obey any requests of the master, and survival and death are only at the master's whim. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket interception probability assessment. 100% close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket intercept. Close black lens bracket. Charlotte. Chapter 20. Get it quickly. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Nice was very excited. Since becoming extraordinary, it had never imagined it would have a day like today. It had fallen so far, yet it still had the chance to enslave a goddess. Not only that, but such a beautiful goddess, whose mere presence would brighten one's mood every day. Just thinking about how the lofty goddess would be defiled by it, and how it would reluctantly pout every day to give it a knee pillow, groom it, feed it small fish, and warm its bed. Nice felt its brain unable to contain itself from trembling with excitement. The feeling of trampling a strong opponent underneath, seeing the other party furious yet helpless against oneself, was truly an immensely pleasurable thing. It had almost imagined what kinds of embarrassing things it would make the other party do under its influence after successfully enslaving her. And the benefits of enslaving a god were not just limited to that. Once it signed the servant's final oath, a contract that directly targeted the soul, sealing the other party's strength, the other party wouldn't be able to escape its grasp for the rest of its life. Not only would it gain a noble and beautiful attendant, but it would also gain a powerful sidekick. Nice could already imagine the wonderful and fantastical new life it would have after signing the contract. When I return to the church hospital with her, Raoul's expression will surely be quite entertaining. Imagining the old priest's dumbfounded expression, Nice became increasingly excited. Brilliant light emanated from its body, and its proud and unrestrained voice echoed through the night. Meow. Your Excellency, the great and arrogant evil god, please remember, all arrogance comes with a painful price. Hee. If anyone is to blame, it's you for choosing such a weak vessel as the medium to descend upon. With that, Nice waved its paw, and a phantom silver halo connected it to Charlotte. This was the most crucial step to come. It would sign the most stringent master-servant contract with this evil god on the level of the soul. Sacred radiance enveloped Nice. It felt its soul being instantly pulled, soaring towards the sealed evil god. It was suddenly stunned. Wait a minute, why is it my soul being pulled instead? Before it could figure out what was happening, it was brought into a vast and mysterious spiritual world. It found itself in a towering and mysterious black castle, surrounded by crimson mist. In the center of the castle hall, on ascending stairs, a majestic and mysterious blood throne came into view. Above the throne, crimson light gradually condensed into a beautiful blonde-haired, blood-colored eyes girl. She wore a black gold gothic gown, crossed her legs, supported her head with one hand, and flipped through a thick blood-colored book with the other. An ancient and vast aura emanated from her as if it originated from a long-forgotten past. She chuckled lightly, her eyes as bright as the blooming spring, casting a playful glance. Nice, your contract, I gladly accept it. Her voice was ethereal and melodious. However, to Nice's ears, it sounded like a demon's whisper. At this point, it finally realized a terrifying reality that made its hair stand up. *T, the covenanted caste, was FC King reversed. When did this happen? When did it get contaminated? Nice was instantly horrified. Bewilderment, shock, incomprehension, confusion. Various thoughts tumbled in its mind. No, I won't sign the contract. Meow. Nice cried out, wanting to escape from this illusory spiritual world. But soon it found that it had completely lost control of its consciousness. The contract ritual had already begun. Meow. In Nice's desperate gaze, one after another silver chains converged around it, forming a mysterious thorn and rose imprint, and then directly pierced into its soul. Boom. The dazzling divine light dissipated, and Nice returned to reality. In a daze, it felt like its soul had gained some extra shackles. The serene moonlight was still beautiful, but the black cat felt like the whole world had lost its color. Charlotte still stood in the prison of order, looking at it with a smile that was not a smile. We rely on your support. Novelplex.org. Donate now. Looking at those sapphire-like beautiful eyes, Nice shuddered coldly. It swallowed hard and forced out a smile. Cough, Your Excellency. I suddenly remembered, the cat bowl at home seems to be unwashed. You can enjoy the moonlight slowly. Nice has something to do, so Nice will leave first. Goodbye to you. With that, it turned around and ran away. Stop. A cold command rang clear amid the night wind. On Nice's forehead, the thorn and rose imprint flashed, and the cat abruptly stopped in its tracks. It wasn't because it wanted to stop. It was because its damn body stopped on its own. Sit down. The second command came. With a plop, the black cat Nice, as if seized by an irresistible force, sat down on the ground. Its fat cat face turned extremely ugly. Roll over. The third command came. Nice widened its eyes, somewhat incredulous. Meow, you can kill a cat, but never humiliate. It said angrily then. It obediently lay down on the ground, rolling over playfully. Nice was on the verge of tears, but it was obvious that Charlotte had no intention of letting it go. Well done, now do a backflip. Her voice was much more playful and cheerful. Nice. It glared angrily at the girl, its eyes almost spitting fire. But its chubby body moved involuntarily, leaping up, and then with a plop, it fell to the ground. Silence. Caw. In the distance, several crows cawed cheerfully, as if mocking Nice for eating *T. In the cool night breeze, Charlotte sighed lightly. You need to lose weight. Nice. At that moment, the sound of hooves became clear, and several powerful auras rushed towards the courtyard. Charlotte's gaze slightly narrowed, her cold gaze swept across the messy courtyard, and her eyes finally met Nice's. Looking at the bloodstains and the gruesome corpses all over the ground, Nice's eyes flickered slightly, and it suddenly smiled. Hee, it seems that the people from the Demon Hunter department are here. Unfortunately, your secret will eventually be revealed. Saying this, it became gloating again. Charlotte also smiled. Watching Nice smile. That beautiful and charming smile, in Nice's eyes, was like a devil disguised as an angel. The next moment, her expression turned cold, and she glanced lightly at the black cat. Clean up, understood? The holy symbol on its forehead flickered slightly, and Nice's smile froze on its face. Chapter 21, Cat Prop and Drama Queen. Published by Ranobes. Gospel of Blood. Sir Knight, it's the courtyard ahead. I saw a carriage go in there with 2 horsemen following. They also had crossbows in their hands. On the dilapidated street, a skinny vagrant pointed to the yard not far away, trying to please. In front of him were 2 squads of knights. One squad dressed in black robes and carried silver swords, obviously knights from the Demon Hunters group. Leading them were the Silver Moon female knight, Kara, and the Duke's son, Leno, followed by the anxious old butler of the Castell family, Casimodo. The other squad was uniformly dressed in leather armor, the city guards of Board City, led by a nobleman with a mustache. The nobleman in the robe was talking to the vagrant. He touched his mustache with dignity, nodded slightly, and then looked obsequiously at Leno beside him. Lord Leno, it should be here. This used to be the mansion of Count Broyce. After the disaster 10 years ago, it was abandoned. We received